Chapter 71. Chapter 71, Dark Bloodstone. 54969039. In more than a month, Lu Ming's cultivation had advanced by 2 levels. This speed was already extremely shocking. This liquid might be extremely poisonous to others, but to me, it's a treasure. Unfortunately, it's something that can only be encountered by luck. Lu Ming pondered to himself. Then, he opened his mouth and exhaled gently. A beam of air formed and shot out a few meters away like a sharp sword. A 7th grade master realm is indeed powerful. He's so much stronger than a 5th grade master realm. One move is enough for me to fight Ningfeng again. Feeling the dragon-shaped vital energy surging in his body, Lu Ming was overjoyed. Rustle. At this moment, a rustling sound could be heard. The sound came from the pit, and when he looked closer, he saw a dark red worm crawling in the pit. This worm was thicker than a thumb and more than a foot long. Its entire body was crystal clear like blood jade, and it had a mouth of sharp fangs. At this moment, when he saw Lu Ming, he seemed to be shocked. He twisted his body and quickly darted away. This is blood breath bugs. Lu Ming was slightly stunned, then he was overjoyed. According to the ancient records, the blood breath bugs had dark bloodstones as their companions. In other words, the place where the blood breath bugs lived would definitely have dark bloodstones. He had not expected that there would be a blood breath bug in the pond. Lu Ming did not hesitate at all. He rushed over and followed closely behind the blood breath bug. When the blood breath bug saw Lu Ming chasing after it, it twisted its body even faster and rushed forward. Do you think it's that easy to leave? Lu Ming smiled and strode forward, following closely behind the blood breath bug. After about 1,000 meters, the blood breath bug suddenly burrowed into the ground and disappeared. Not good. The blood breath bugs can dig underground. Lu Ming's heart skipped a beat. He rushed over, but the blood breath bugs were nowhere to be seen. Buzz. Lu Ming leaped onto a big tree and scanned his surroundings. Sure enough, not long after, 100 meters away, the blood breath bug's figure emerged from the ground and rushed forward. I can't chase it too close. This will only disturb it and prevent it from running back to its resting place. Lu Ming's figure flashed and he jumped onto another big tree. He leaped on the trunk, restrained his aura, and followed closely behind the blood breath bugs. They crossed over mountains and ridges, and continued for dozens of miles. At this time, the blood breath bug stopped again. It burrowed into the ground and disappeared. Could this be the place? Lu Ming pondered. He was not in a hurry to rush out. Instead, he began to observe. After a while, there was still no movement. Lu Ming was certain that this should be the blood breath bug's habitat. Lu Ming moved and came to the place where the blood breath bugs disappeared. Looks like it's here. The dark bloodstone should be right below. Then, he took out the black-edged sword he used before and used it as a shovel to start digging. With Lu Ming's cultivation level and the sharpness of the black-edged sword, he was able to dig through the rocky ground at a very fast speed. Soon, a pit several meters deep was dug. At this moment, a red light shot out with a swish. It was the blood breath bug. After the blood breath bug rushed out, it did not stop at all and ran away. Lu Ming ignored him and continued digging. Very quickly, a faint fragrance, like that of sandalwood, wafted out. Lu Ming's spirits were lifted. According to the ancient records, although the dark bloodstone was called the dark bloodstone, it did not have the slightest smell of blood. Instead, it had the fragrance of sandalwood. Since this smell was coming out, it meant that there was definitely a dark bloodstone here. Lu Ming dug even harder. As a piece of rock was dug up, a rich fragrance filled the air. Below him, a stone the size of a fist with blood-red lines all over its body appeared before Lu Ming. This was the dark bloodstone. Lu Ming was overjoyed. He took out the dark bloodstone and looked at it carefully. This was the true war dragon technique's 3rd stage, and even the 4th stage required it. He took a look at it and then kept it in the supreme shrine. However, at the next moment, Lu Ming's expression changed because the scent of sandalwood was still coming from below. Could there be dark bloodstones? Lu Ming was overjoyed and quickly dug with all his might. Sure enough, he didn't dig too deep before he found another dark bloodstone. It was still the size of a fist, and it emitted a strong sandalwood fragrance. Ha ha ha, what great luck! Lu Ming was overjoyed and took out the dark bloodstone. However, there was still the fragrance of sandalwood coming from below. Still, there are more. This time, even Lu Ming was a little stunned. At this moment, Lu Ming's expression changed because he heard the sound of air breaking coming from all around. There's the smell of sandalwood. It's the dark bloodstone. Hurry up. There was a commotion, and then 5 or 6 figures appeared. Buzz. And NBSB, whoosh. In the forest, 6 figures suddenly appeared and surrounded Lu Ming. They did not hide their auras at all. They burst out and enveloped Lu Ming. 4 of them were 7th grade Master Realm, and 2 of them were peak 6th grade Master Realm. There were men and women among the 6, but they were all very young, about 18 or 19 years old. At this moment, the 6 of them were looking at the big pit that Lu Ming had dug with burning eyes. There is indeed a dark bloodstone. Kid, you can get lost now. The dark bloodstone here belongs to us. A young man with an aquiline nose looked at Lu Ming and said coldly, "Everyone, I was the first to discover this place." Lu Ming smiled faintly. "So what if you discovered it first? It's ours now." The hook-nosed young man sneered, his expression full of pride and arrogance. "So you want to rob me? Let's see if you have the ability to do so." Lu Ming smiled faintly, looking very relaxed. "Brat, you're looking for death." The hook-nosed youth shouted coldly, then clawed at Lu Ming. 5 sharp claw gleams were aimed at Lu Ming's chest. Boom! Lu Ming threw a punch. Bang! Catcha! There was a loud bang, followed by a cracking sound. Then, the hook-nosed young man let out a shrill scream and retreated a dozen steps. One of his hands trembled and blood kept flowing out. His 5 fingers had been broken by Lu Ming's punch. "Brat, how dare you? Do you know who we are? We're disciples of the Azure Dragon Hall of the Mystical Sword Sect. You're dead for hurting me. My hand." The hook-nosed youth screamed and roared. "Azure Dragon Hall disciple? No wonder his cultivation is not weak despite his young age." Lu Ming's expression changed. I remember now. You are Lu Ming, this year's newcomer king, Lu Ming. I saw you from afar when the last trial ended." Suddenly, a female disciple shouted. "What? His Lu Ming?" The others couldn't help but exclaim. "I didn't expect that you would still recognize me." Lu Ming touched his nose and smiled faintly. "Lu Ming, although you're the newcomer king, I still have to give you a piece of advice. Get out of the way and leave. We can pretend that today's incident never happened because this dark bloodstone is something Senior Brother Yarrow Tianyu needs. We're also looking for it under Senior Brother Yarrow Tianyu's orders." The woman said one sentence after another, her tone full of confidence. She felt that as long as she mentioned Yarrow Tianyu's name, Lu Ming could only get lost obediently. Chapter 72. Chapter 72. Geniuses on the Bronze List. 549690339. Who knew that Lu Ming's next sentence almost caused her to suffer from internal injuries? Who is Yarrow Tianyu? It's none of my business that he needs the dark bloodstone, but do I need it? I'll let you off on account of us being from the mystical sword sect. Lu Ming waved his hands and said impatiently, "You! How dare you? Senior Brother Yarrow Tianyu is a genius on the bronze rank, the top of all the bronze disciples. Are you tired of living?" The young woman shouted angrily, her face red. "He's on the bronze rank. No wonder he's so arrogant." Lu Ming was slightly stunned. The bronze ranking was a ranking list among the 4 halls of the mystical sword sect. Those who could be listed on this list were all top geniuses among the bronze disciples. Each of them was terrifyingly powerful. He was now standing at the peak of the bronze disciples. But what did it have to do with Lu Ming? He didn't care if he was a disciple of the bronze ranking. Did he think that a disciple of the bronze ranking could snatch his dark bloodstone? When the woman saw Lu Ming in a daze, she thought that Lu Ming was afraid of the bronze list. She sneered and said, "Lu Ming, hand over the dark bloodstones now, then follow us to kowtow and admit your mistakes to Senior Brother Yarrow Tianyu. This way, Perhaps senior brother Yarrow Tianyu can let bygones be bygones. Hand over the dark bloodstone. Kowtow and admit your mistake. Lu Ming looked at the lady with a strange expression, as if he was looking at a fool. He then said, "You're all bronze disciples of the mystical sword sect, but there's something wrong with your brains." The young woman was stunned and only reacted after a long time. She was so angry that her whole body trembled and she screamed, "Lu Ming, what did you say? You're looking for death. Why are you wasting your breath on him? Let's attack together and cripple him. Then, we'll bring him to senior brother Yarrow Tianyu and let him deal with him." The hook-nosed youngster also shouted with a sinister expression. Attack! The 6 of them attacked at the same time and charged toward Lu Ming. Sword Chi, Saber Radiance, Claw Force, Palm Wind instantly enveloped Lu Ming's entire body. "You're looking for death." Lu Ming's eyes darkened. With a move of his hand, the star sword appeared in his hand. With a flash of sword radiance, he slashed out more than 10 times in an instant. Ah! Ah! With 6 consecutive screams, the 6 youths from the Azure Dragon Hall retreated rapidly. The 6 of them were forced back a dozen steps before they could regain their footing. Each of them had a deep sword wound on their chest, and blood was flowing out. A single sword had injured 6 people. How can he be so strong? How was that possible? More than a month ago, I heard that he defeated Ning Feng, but it was a difficult victory. How could he become so strong in just a month? The 6 young men's faces were pale and their eyes were filled with disbelief. "Go. Let's go. This person can't be defeated." The woman screamed and quickly retreated. She was almost scared out of her wits. Buzz! Buzz! The other 5 didn't dare to stop and ran for their lives. Lu Ming's eyes flickered, but he did not pursue. He wasn't confident that he could keep all 6 of them alive if they scattered. After that, Lu Ming continued to dig. Following that, Lu Ming dug out 2 more dark bloodstones in a row. There were a total of 4 dark bloodstones in this place. "That's enough." Lu Ming laughed. After checking that there were no more dark bloodstones, Lu Ming turned and left. "The blood-reeky flower and the dark bloodstone have been found. It's time to return to the sect." Lu Ming smiled. Although there were some twists and turns on this trip, everything was considered smooth. His figure didn't stop, and he headed towards the direction of the Dark Blood Mountain. Along the way, he came across a dark blood wolf that was alone. He tamed it and used it as a mount. That green scale horse had been outside for so long, it had probably run off to who knows where. This dark blood wolf was a demonic beast of 2nd grade 2nd level. It was extremely strong and powerful, far beyond the green scale horse. He crossed mountains and ridges as if he was walking on flat ground. Very quickly, he left the Dark Blood Mountain and headed in the direction of the mystical sword sect. In the depths of Dark Blood Mountain, a figure was sitting cross-legged on a large rock on the peak of a mountain. This figure looked to be only about 17 years old. He was handsome and had a cold expression. He was just sitting there casually, but he exuded a sharp aura. On the side, there were more than 10 young men standing there, not even daring to breathe loudly. These youths included the 6 youths from before. "Senior brother Yao, this is what happened," the hook-nosed youth reported. This cold-looking young man was Yarrow Tianyu, a genius on the bronze ranking. In the world of martial Dao, the strong came first. Although Yarrow Tianyu was young, the others still respectfully called him senior brother. Yarrow Tianyu furrowed his brows and said, "You're saying that there might be more than 1 dark blood stone there and they're all in Lu Ming's hands now?" "That's right, senior brother Yao. That Lu Ming is extremely arrogant. Not only did he injure us, but he also didn't give you any face at all." But Lu Ming said that Yarrow Tianyu is something. The hook-nosed young man hurriedly replied. Of course, there were a lot of exaggeration in his answer. The other 5's eyes flashed, but they didn't refute the hook-nosed youth. Hee. After hearing this, Yarrow Tianyu let out a cold smile and said, "Are all the newcomers so arrogant these days?" "Lu Ming. Newcomer king? How dare you act so arrogantly in front of me? Let's talk about it in a few years." Then, he looked at the crowd and said, "Go and find Lu Ming. As long as he's still in the Dark Blood Mountain, I won't let him return to the Vermilion Bird Hall." "Yes. A dozen of young men replied loudly. Then, their figures flickered and they left the mountain peak, disappearing into the forest of the Dark Blood Mountain. Lu Ming. Yarrow Tianyu muttered as a killing intent flashed across his eyes. The Dark Blood Wolf was as fast as lightning, and its speed was much faster than the Greenscale horse. In less than 7 days, Lu Ming arrived at the sky-crossing city again. When he passed by the Zhu family's residence, he discovered that the house was already empty. Even the main door was covered in cobwebs. It seemed that the Zhu family had already been destroyed by the Zhu family. This was how the divine wilderness continent was. Strength was everything. Every day was filled with killing, and every day, countless forces were destroyed. Lu Ming shook his head. He found a restaurant, ordered some food and wine, and started eating. Unconsciously, his thoughts drifted back to Fiery Wind City. The sky-crossing city is not far from Fiery Wind City. It's only a 3-day journey. I don't need 3 days to ride the Dark Blood Wolf. I might as well go back and see my mother, Lu Ming thought. It had been almost 4 months since he came out. It was time to go back and take a look. He quickly finished his meal, left the restaurant, and headed towards Fiery Wind City. It only took them a little more than 2 days to return to Fiery Wind City. Roar. Walking on the streets of Fiery Wind City, the Dark Blood Wolf let out a long howl, which frightened everyone on the street. What a terrifying demonic beast. Let's go. Go and get the experts of the Lu family to suppress it. The demonic beasts have entered the city. Hey! No, look, isn't that the young master of the Lu family, Lu Ming? It's him, it's really him. There was an uproar nearby. The others kept their distance from Lu Ming, afraid that they would be bitten to death by the Dark Blood Wolf. Bang! Lu Ming slapped the Dark Blood Wolf's neck, almost causing it to fall to the ground. What are you shouting for? Be good. Lu Ming berated. Woo-woo. The Dark Blood Wolf barked like a domestic dog, extremely well behaved. The people nearby were dumbfounded. Chapter 73. Chapter 73, Returning Home, Bandits Attacking. 54969039. The Dark Blood Wolf followed behind Lu Ming like a puppy. Soon, they arrived at the Lu clan's residence. Who's there? Stop. Ah! It's the young master, it's the young master. The guard in front of the Lu clan's estate shouted, but he immediately reacted and shouted. Young master is back. Young master, please come in. The guard hurriedly said. Lu Ming smiled and nodded. He led the Dark Blood Wolf into the Lu residence. Good day, young master. The young master is back. The young master is back. After entering the Lu family, the people of the Lu family greeted Lu Ming respectfully when they saw him. Then, the news spread quickly throughout the Lu family. Young master is so powerful, he actually brought such a powerful demonic beast. That's right. I feel that this demonic beast is even scarier than many of the elders. It's actually so well behaved in front of the young master. Of course. The young master is a disciple of the mystical sword sect. Some of the Lu family's servants looked at Lu Ming from afar, especially at the Dark Blood Wolf. They were in a heated discussion, their faces full of respect. Lu Ming smiled bitterly and touched his nose. He had just caught a Dark Blood Wolf as a means of transportation. He did not expect it to cause such a big commotion. Very soon, Lu Ming arrived at the main residence. At the main residence's entrance, Li Ping was already looking forward to it. She had obviously heard the news. Ming-er. At the sight of Lu Ming, Li Ping's face broke into a happy smile. Mother, I've come back to see you. Lu Ming said affectionately. Then, he patted the Dark Blood Wolf's neck and said, obediently lie down at the door and don't move. Otherwise, I'll kill you to go with my wine. Woo-woo. The Dark Blood Wolf howled pitifully a few times before lying on the ground obediently. Li Ping and the maidservants behind her were dumbfounded. Mother, let's go in and talk. Lu Ming said. Good. Good. Li Ping said. There was a stone table in the main residence's courtyard. At this moment, Li Ping's maidservant had already set up desserts and brewed tea. Ming-er, how have you been? Li Ping asked with concern. Looking at Li Ping's concerned eyes, Lu Ming's heart felt warm. Do you think I've become stronger? After he finished speaking, he even gestured with his arms. Look at how smug you are. Li Ping laughed and scolded him. Then, she changed her tone and asked, Ming where's Qiu Yu? Didn't you come back together? Lu Ming smiled and said, Mother, how's Qiu Yu doing? She's a genius disciple of the mystical sword sect now. Lu Ming briefly explained what had happened to them during this period. Of course, Lu Ming did not mention anything that was dangerous to Li Ping so that she would not worry. I didn't expect Qiu Yu to have such talent. I'm really happy for her. Upon hearing that Qiu Yu had joined the mystical sword sect's most mysterious and powerful Qilin Hall, Li Ping was also very happy. Qiu Yu had followed her for many years and she had treated Qiu Yu like her own daughter. Now that Qiu Yu had become successful, he was naturally happy. The mother and son continued to chat. Roar. Suddenly, a loud roar came from outside the door. It was the roar of the dark blood wolf. Young master, it's us. Then, an old voice was heard. The core elder of the Elder Council. Lu Ming's expression changed. He quickly got up and walked out of the door. At that moment, the dark blood wolf was standing at the door. Its red fur stood on end as it glared at the 5 old men. These 5 old men were the core elders of the Elder Council. What are you doing? Get down. Lu Ming slapped the dark blood wolf again. The dark blood wolf whimpered and obediently lay on the ground again. Young master, is this your war beast? It's so powerful. I'm afraid it's a class 2 second level demonic beast. A core elder said as he looked at the dark blood wolf with a hint of fear in his eyes. A second grade second level demonic beast was equivalent to a second grade master realm. In the Lu clan, most of the elders were only at the first grade master realm. Only a small number of elders, including the core elders of the Elder Council, were above the second grade master realm. This dark blood wolf could be considered a top expert in the Lu family. The young master actually had such a demonic beast as his battle beast. He was really amazing. A few core elders thought to themselves, oh, this dark blood wolf. It's not my war beast, it's something I caught along the way as a means of transportation. Its speed is still alright, slightly faster than the green scale horse. Lu Ming said casually. Ah, what? A means of transportation that you randomly grabbed? The 5 core elders were stunned. Then, they looked at each other in disbelief. Elders, is there anything I can help you with? Lu Ming asked. It's nothing much. It's just that the young master hasn't returned for a long time, so I came to see him. The 5 core elders looked at each other and one of them said. Lu Ming frowned slightly. He had a feeling that the 5 core elders were hiding something from him. Elder, bad news. At this moment, a burly man ran over in a hurry and called out anxiously. The 5 core elders' expressions suddenly changed and they asked in unison, what happened? The middle-aged man glanced at the 5 elders and then at Lu Ming. He said, the Samophis pirates and the skeleton pirates have come to attack again. This time, they're attacking the refined iron mine in the south. The refined iron mine has been surrounded. What? He actually went to sneak attack the refined iron mine, damn it. One of the core elders roared. The other core elders also looked worried. Elders, what's going on? Lu Ming asked. Hey, young master, it's like this. One of the core elders began to explain. The demonic beast mountain range stretched for thousands of miles and crossed several cities. There were many bandits active in the demonic beast mountain range. Near Fiery Wind City were the Samophis pirates. As for the Dry Bone bandits, they were a group of bandits that were active near another big city. They were many times stronger than the Samophis pirates. About half a month ago, for some reason, the Samophis pirates suddenly colluded with the Dry Bone pirates and started to attack some of the Lu family's mines and trade caravans. The Lu clan had naturally organized experts to encircle and annihilate them, but there were many experts among the Dry Bone bandits. The leader of the Dry Bone bandits was a 5th grade master realm expert. A few days ago, the Lu family's core elders had been dispatched. However, the strongest core elder of the Lu family, who was a 4th grade master realm expert, had been injured by the Dry Bone Bandits' leader and was still unable to get out of bed. Samophis pirates, skeleton pirates. There was a flash of killing intent in Lu Ming's eyes. He was very familiar with the Samophis pirates. His first startup capital had been stolen from their lair. How dare they attack the Lu family? Let's go. I'll destroy them. Lu Ming said coldly. Young lord, don't act rashly. The leader of the Dry Bone Bandits is a 5th grade Master Realm expert. I know that you're talented, but you've only joined the mystical sword sect not long ago. We can't defend our sleevers for now. The Samophis pirates and the Dry Bone Bandits are small in numbers, so it's impossible to break through. Hearing that Lu Ming was about to charge over, the 5 core elders' expressions changed and they hurriedly advised him. That's right, Ming don't act rashly. Li Ping also advised. Chapter 74. Chapter 74. Chapter 74 One Sword Strike. 54969039. Mother, 5 elders, don't worry. It's just 2 groups of bandits. I can kill them with a flip of my hand. You don't have to worry. Send someone to lead the way. There's no need to say anything. Lu Ming smiled, looking very confident. This. All right then, but we'll go together. One of the core elders said. Lu Ming smiled. He knew that the few core elders were worried about his safety and he did not reject them. Ming you must be careful. Li Ping said worriedly. Mother, don't worry. I'll be back soon. Lu Ming gave Li Ping a confident smile. At the sight of Lu Ming's confident smile, Li Ping's worry was slightly alleviated. Not long after, the Lu family gathered some people and headed towards the refined iron mine in the south of the mountain range of beasts under the lead of a few core elders. That refined iron mine was the main source of income for the Lu clan. Of course, they also had a large number of troops. In the past, the Samophis pirates would not have dared to attack this refined iron mine alone. But it was different now. There were the skeleton bandits. Boom, boom, boom. The sound of horses' hooves rang out. The Lu clan had mobilized hundreds of people, causing dust to fill the air. In front of them, a huge mountain appeared. In front of the mountain, there were 300 to 400 people, surrounding the entrance. 2 flags were raised high, one with a snake and the other with a skeleton. Ha ha ha, the Lu clan has indeed sent reinforcements. A burst of laughter came from the bandits. A strong man riding a tall green scale horse blocked in front of them. Samophis pirates, skeleton pirates, and clowns. How dare they attack our Lu family? They're really looking for death. Lu Ming rode on the dark blood wolf and led the way, shouting coldly. Young master, don't be careless. This man is the 2nd leader of the Dry Bone Bandits. His cultivation has already reached the 4th grade Master Realm. One of the core elders hurriedly reminded. The burly man was slightly taken aback when he saw Lu Ming. Then, he turned to look at the dark blood wolf under Lu Ming's command. His eyes narrowed slightly, and a scorching flame flickered. Ha, it seems like there's really no one left in the Lu family. After beating up the old one, a brat still wet behind his ears has come. Are they taking turns to court death? The second in command of the Dry Bone Bandits laughed contemptuously and continued, Your mount is not bad. Hurry up and give it to me. I can give you a quick death. Give me a quick death. Lu Ming's lips curled into a cold smile. He controlled the dark blood wolf and walked forward step by step. How ignorant. I'm ignorant. Don't think that you can scare me with a decent demonic beast as a mount. Just watch how I kill you. Ha. The second in command of the Dry Bone Bandits bellowed as he maneuvered the green scale horse and charged at Lu Ming like a gust of wind. The saber in his hand was like a violent gust of wind, slashing at Lu Ming. Lu Ming sat on the dark blood wolf, not moving at all, as if he was frightened. Young master, be careful. The 5 core elders were shocked and shouted. Ha, die. The second in command of the Dry Bone Bandits sneered, his eyes flashing with killing intent. But the next moment, the smile on his face disappeared, because he saw a flash of sword light, which seemed to be faster than lightning, slashing toward him. He didn't even have time to dodge, let alone dodge, he didn't even have time to react. Then, he felt a cold sensation on his neck. In the next moment, he saw a headless corpse galloping forward on a green-scaled horse. Then, he fell into endless darkness. 1. A sword strike. Behind him, the 5 core elders and the rest of the Lu family were all stunned. The second-in-command of the Dry Bone Bandits, a 4th-grade Master Realm expert, was an unattainable existence in their eyes. However, Lu Ming had killed him with a single sword strike. It had only been a few months, and the young master's cultivation had already reached such a realm. This thought emerged in the hearts of the Lu family members. Then, their hearts burned with passion and their eyes were filled with infinite anticipation. It had only been a short while and Lu Ming was already so powerful. What realm would Lu Ming reach in a few years or even decades? They seemed to see the rapid rise of the Lu family. The second leader is dead, the second leader is dead. The Dry Bone Bandits exclaimed. Who's there? How dare you kill my second brother? The Dry Bone Bandits roared. A burly man riding on a leopard rushed out of the crowd, his roar like thunder. Young lord, he's the leader of the skeleton bandits. One of the core elders said. Just kill him. As Lu Ming's cold voice rang out, he leaped off the dark bloodwolf's back and crossed over 20 meters before landing on the ground. Then, he stomped on the ground heavily. With a bang, the ground shook and Lu Ming's body shot out like a cannonball. In the blink of an eye, he was in front of the Dry Bone Bandit leader. How could he be so fast? The Dry Bone Bandit leader turned pale with fright. Lu Ming's speed was too fast, so fast that he was shocked. Die! The Dry Bone Bandit leader roared in shock. He slashed with all his might, trying to force Lu Ming to retreat. But in the next moment, he was in despair. Whoosh! Lu Ming's sword light was too fast. It was so fast that he could not dodge it in time. Poochie! A head flew high into the air and landed in the middle of the Withered Bones Daoists group. The entire place fell into silence. Kill! Lu Ming's loud roar woke everyone up. Kill! Kill! Follow the young master and kill all the bandit. Let's charge! The 5 core elders shouted with all their might. Their old faces were red with excitement as they rode on their green-scaled horses and charged towards the Samophis pirates and the Dry Bone pirates. Kill! Follow the young master and kill all the bandit. The other members of the Lu clan shouted one after another. With hundreds of people together, their voices were rolling and their morale was high. On the other hand, the first and second leaders of the Dry Bone Bandits had been killed by Lu Ming in succession. They were already scared out of their wits and did not have the courage to resist. They retreated one after another and it was a mess. At this time, a group of people rushed out of the Lu family's refined iron mine, causing more chaos between the 2 gangs of bandits. Lu Ming rushed into the group of bandits. With a flash of his sword, rows of bandits were killed. Every one of these bandits had blood on their hands. They were all people who deserved to die. Lu Ming did not show any mercy. In his hands, the bandits could not resist at all. He was harvesting lives to his heart's content. Wherever Lu Ming passed by, a large number of corpses would fall. It was a one-sided battle, and the bandits had almost no power to resist. Not long after, the entire area was filled with corpses. 300 to 400 bandits were all killed. Ha ha ha, the Samophis pirates and the Dry Bone pirates have been annihilated. Long live the young master! Long live the invincible young master! The people of the Lu family cheered. It took a long time before it gradually calmed down. After that, a group of people were left behind to clean up the battlefield. The 5 core elders took a group of people and returned to the Lu family with Lu Ming. The news of this battle quickly spread throughout the entire Fiery Wind City. Countless people were shocked by this news. The first and second leaders of the 5th grade Master Realm and 4th grade Master Realm were no match for Lu Ming's single move. They were easily killed by Lu Ming's sword. It was simply too shocking. Li Ping was the happiest of them all. The more powerful Lu Ming was, the happier she would be. After that, the Lu family held a grand banquet, and the famous people of Fiery Wind City came to congratulate them. However, Lu Ming only responded casually and found an excuse to go back to his room to cultivate. Chapter 75. Chapter 75, Summoned by Yarrow Tianyu. 5496903339. In the blink of an eye, Lu Ming had stayed in the Lu family for 7 days. In the past 7 days, other than cultivating, Lu Ming had been accompanying Li Ping and chatting. There were a few times when he almost wanted to tell Li Ping that Lu Yuntian might still be alive. However, he managed to hold himself back in the end. 7 days later, Lu Ming bade Li Ping farewell and rode the Dark Blood Wolf back to the mystical sword sect. After 5 days, the mystical sword sect was already within sight. Go! Since you've ferried me for so long, I'll set you free. Lu Ming patted the Dark Blood Wolf's neck. Woo woo! The Dark Blood Wolf cried out excitedly and ran away, as if it was afraid that Lu Ming would go back on his words. It disappeared into the forest in the distance in the blink of an eye. Lu Ming smiled and walked towards the mystical sword sect. Not long after, Lu Ming returned to the mystical sword sect. However, he didn't return to the dormitory first. Instead, he went to the Hall of Missions. He had to hand in the mission first. He walked into the mission palace hall and came to a counter. "Junior brother, are you here to accept the mission or to submit it?" A pretty young woman asked from behind the counter. "I'm here to hand in my mission." Lu Ming passed a mission card to the young lady. It was the Blood Reiki Flowers mission. As for the Zhu family's escort mission, since the Zhu family had already been destroyed, there was naturally no need to hand it in. Blood Flower mission? I wonder how many Blood Reiki flowers you've collected? The young woman asked. She knew that this task was not easy to do. It was not easy to collect the Blood Reiki flowers. Not only did they have to go to the Dark Blood Mountain, but they also only needed 100 contribution points to collect one. It would take too long to go back and forth. It was not worth it at all. Therefore, not many people accepted it. She was rather curious about how many flowers Lu Ming could collect. "Senior sister, please check." Lu Ming waved his hand and a huge pile of Blood Reiki flowers appeared on the counter. "This? So many." The young woman looked at the Blood Reiki flower on the counter and was stunned. Her small mouth was wide open. She had never expected that Lu Ming would be able to collect so many Blood Reiki flowers. The pile of Blood Reiki flowers also attracted the attention of a large number of people nearby. So many Blood Reiki flowers. Who is this person? You don't even know this year's Rookie King? So it's him. He's so lucky to have found so many Blood Reiki flowers. You're indeed very lucky. Envious voices could be heard from all around. That. Can you help me check? Lu Ming stretched out his hand and waved it in front of the young woman's eyes. Okay. The young woman came to her senses and quickly helped Lu Ming to count. There are 55 Blood Reiki flowers in total. Each one costs 100 contribution points. That's 5,500 contribution points in total. The young woman said, her eyes revealing a light of envy. 5,500 contribution points. She didn't know how long it would take for her to earn that much. Lu Ming nodded and passed his identity jade card to the young lady. After a while, Lu Ming's identity jade card had an additional 5,500 contribution points. After handing in the mission, Lu Ming did not stop and went straight to his dormitory. Lu Ming did not notice that there were 2 young men outside the mission's hall who had been watching him leave. Lu Ming is back. Hurry back and report to senior brother Yarrow Tianyu. Let's go. A moment later, Lu Ming returned to the dormitory. He realized that Pang Shi and Hua Kai were not around. Lu Ming guessed that Pang Shi and Hua Kai were most likely cultivating somewhere else or doing missions. Lu Ming did not think much of it. He walked into the room, sat cross-legged, and began to cultivate the true war dragon technique. After a few days of cultivation, Lu Ming's cultivation had already been completely consolidated. He was now fully focused on advancing towards the middle stage of the 7th grade Master Realm. 3 hours later, Lu Ming finally ended his cultivation. Bang! At this moment, there was a loud crash from the door of the courtyard outside. It seemed to have been kicked open. It's not Pang Shi or Hua Kai. Lu Ming's heart stirred. If it were Pang Shi or Hua Kai, they would not have kicked the door in like this. Lu Ming got up and walked out of the room. He saw two young men walking in from outside. Lu Ming, it's good that you're here. A young man in a red robe sneered when he saw Lu Ming. Who are you? Lu Ming narrowed his eyes slightly. We are the Azure Dragon Hall's disciples. Senior brother Yarrow Tianyu is summoning you. Hurry up and bring the Dark Bloodstone to the Azure Dragon Hall and meet him. The red-robed young man said coldly. His tone was filled with arrogance and a commanding tone. Yarrow Tianyu? Lu Ming raised his eyebrows. He suddenly remembered. Wasn't he the Yarrow Tianyu on the bronze list that the Azure Dragon Hall disciples had mentioned on the Dark Blood Mountain? He was really in a hurry. Lu Ming had just returned and he was already here. And it was a summon. She wanted him to meet her. The corners of Lu Ming's lips curled into a cold smile. He replied indifferently with two words, I'm not free. What? Not free? Senior brother Yarrow Tianyu has summoned you. Even if you have a serious matter to deal with, you have to put it down. Quickly take the Dark Blood Stone and come with us. The red-robed youth berated. He still had a haughty expression. Yarrow Tianyu, what the hell are you talking about? I told you, I'm not free. Get lost. Lu Ming's face darkened and he said coldly. What? You're courting death, you. Get lost. Before the red-robed young man could say anything else, Lu Ming let out a furious roar and charged forward, his fists blasting out. Bang! Bang! The two young men were also 7th grade Master Realm, but they were no match for Lu Ming. They were sent flying out of the door and landed heavily on the ground. Lu Ming looked down at the two of them and said coldly, I told you to get lost. If you don't, I don't mind throwing the two of you off the Vermilion Bird Peak. Lu Ming, don't be so arrogant. Just you wait. You won't have a good end for offending senior brother Yarrow Tianyu. The red-robed young man shouted loudly, and then fled with the other man. The bronze ranking. Lu Ming's eyes flashed. He didn't know much about the bronze list, but he knew that anyone who could be on the bronze list was a super genius. The highest cultivation level of a bronze disciple was the 9th grade Master Realm. Once they broke through to the Great Martial Master Realm, as long as they were not too old, they would be promoted to a Silivera disciple. The geniuses on the bronze list were all at the peak of the 9th grade Master Realm. Moreover, they weren't ordinary peak 9th grade Master Realm experts. They were all geniuses with extremely powerful combat strength. It was said that an ordinary 9th grade master couldn't even last one move against a genius on the bronze list. The geniuses on the bronze list were all unrivaled in the same realm, and they could even fight against those of a higher realm. To the current Lu Ming, he was undefeatable. Lu Ming returned to his room and started to think. My martial arts skills are too weak now. I have to practice the fire gun chant as soon as possible. But before that, I need to practice the basic gun skills. Lu Ming pondered. No matter what weapon one cultivated, one would need a foundation. Lu Ming had never cultivated a spear technique before. Without a foundation, it was impossible for him to cultivate a black-level low-quality spear technique the moment he started. One had to have a solid foundation for the spear technique in order to cultivate a profound spear technique. Chapter 76. Chapter 76. Chapter 76. A man has his own actions and his own faults. 549690339. The basic usage of the spear was mainly divided into 6 types. It was called the Spear 6 Words Formula: collapse, pull, press, cover, pick, and stab. Only by mastering these 6 basic techniques would he be able to cultivate a more profound spear technique. Immediately, Lu Ming picked up Zhu Bing's spear in the Supreme Shrine and began to cultivate. Whoosh! The long spear turned into a dot and stabbed forward. Then, with a sweep, the long spear turned into a moon shadow and swept out. In this way, Lu Ming practiced the 6-word formula of the basic spearmanship over and over again. In an extremely spacious and luxurious courtyard of the Azure Dragon Court, Yarrow Tianyu sat in the upper part of the living room with a golden saber. A few people were reporting news to him. 2 of them were the 2 people who went to summon Lu Ming previously. Senior brother Yarrow, that Lu Ming is too arrogant. He doesn't respect senior brother Yarrow at all. The red-robed youth said. Lu Ming, Do you really think of yourself as the number one person? You dare to ignore me? I will make you regret it. Yarrow Tianyu's eyes were cold. Senior brother Yarrow, Lu Ming is a disciple of the Vermilion Bird Hall. If he's hiding in the Vermilion Bird Hall, it'll be hard to deal with him. Another young man said with a frown. Do you have any ideas? Yarrow Tianyu asked. At this time, a shrewd young man rolled his eyes and said, Senior brother Yao, I have an idea that can force Lu Ming to show himself or even make him take the initiative to attack. Then, we can take Lu Ming down with a legitimate reason. The man immediately revealed his plan. All right, ha ha ha, let's do that. Yarrow Tianyu laughed out loud. In the Supreme Shrine, Lu Ming had been practicing the 6 words long spear formula. 3 days passed in the blink of an eye. I'm still not stable enough. I didn't have any foundation in spear techniques in the past, so my cultivation was too slow. Lu Ming sighed secretly. Also, although this spear is a spiritual weapon of upper 2nd level, its body isn't soft enough. Looks like I'll need to buy a new one in the future. Lu Ming looked at the long spear in his hands and thought to himself. The spear was mainly divided into the spearhead and the spear body. However, the most important thing was still the spear body. The spear body needed to be both hard and soft. It had to be hard and heavy, yet it had to be soft and elastic to a certain extent. Only then could the true might of the spear technique be unleashed. Zhu Bing's spear was called the fire pattern spear. The spear body was made of fire pattern iron and the tip of the spear was made of dark iron essence. It was considered a good upper 2nd level spiritual weapon, but Lu Ming was not satisfied. Although fire-patterned iron had a certain degree of elasticity, it was still not enough. At this moment, Lu Ming's expression changed. He realized that there was a commotion outside. With a thought, Lu Ming left the Supreme Shrine, opened the door, and walked out. In the courtyard, a group of people walked in. Hua Kai was among them. However, at this time, his face was bruised and swollen. He and the others carried a person in. Be careful. You guys be careful. Hua Kai called out. Lu Ming frowned slightly. He walked forward and asked, Hua Kai, what happened? And who injured you? Lu Ming, you're back. Hua Kai was slightly taken aback when he saw Lu Ming. Then, he dodged his gaze and said, I'm fine. I just accidentally fell while doing a mission. Fell down? Lu Ming's eyes flickered. He then looked at the person who was being carried in by the crowd. At first glance, his eyes suddenly narrowed. This person was none other than Pang Shi. At this moment, Pang Shi's face was deathly pale, and his eyes were tightly shut. He had already fallen unconscious. What's going on? Lu Ming's expression darkened as he asked. There was a moment of silence, and no one spoke. Lu Ming's face darkened as he searched Pang Shi's body. The more he fumbled, the gloomier Lu Ming's expression became. The bones in his 2 legs were broken into several pieces, the bones in his arms were broken, and 3 of his ribs were broken. What was more serious was that his internal organs had also suffered considerable damage. This was clearly a heavy blow. Such a ruthless method. With such a serious injury, a single mistake could affect his future martial Dao path. In more serious cases, he might even be crippled. Speak, what happened? Lu Ming's voice was extremely cold. Lu Ming, it's really fine. It's all our own fault. Hua Kai said through gritted teeth. What caused this? Lu Ming continued to ask. Hua Kai, don't hide it anymore. If you don't tell me, I'll tell you. At this time, another young man shouted. The young man was called Liu Qi. Actually, Lu Ming had some impression of these young people. They were the new disciples of the Vermilion Bird Hall this year. Liu Qi, you can't say. Hua Kai called out. Hua Kai, shut up. Lu Ming shouted and then looked at Liu Qi. Speak. Liu Qi gritted his teeth. Senior brother Lu Ming, Pang Shi was beaten up. He was beaten up by the people from the Star and Moon Alliance. Star Moon Alliance. Lu Ming frowned. He had never heard of this Star Moon Alliance. Senior brother Lu Ming, the Star Moon Alliance is a force formed by some of the Azure Dragon Hall's disciples. They have built a Star Moon Tower in the trading area, which specializes in buying materials and items from disciples. The price is slightly higher than if you exchange them with contribution points. Liu Qi started explaining. Lu Ming nodded. The trading zone was located in the middle of the 4 great academies. It was where the disciples of the 4 great academies bought and sold their items. Although it was convenient to exchange at the contribution palace, the exchange price was relatively lower. Therefore, many disciples would choose to trade in the trading zone when they obtained some materials for alchemy or weapon refinement when they went out for missions. It was more cost-effective that way. Liu Qi continued, during this period of time, Pang Shu and we went out on a mission together. We obtained some materials and sold them at the Star Moon Tower. Who knew that the Star Moon Tower would be so despicable? They only offered 1 tael of Silivera for an item that cost 1,000 taels of Silivera. Pang Shu was so angry that he argued with them. In the end, he was beaten up like this. Even we were beaten up. That's right. The worst thing is that they're only targeting our Vermilion Bird Hall. The other halls are doing fair trade. Another young man shouted. I see, so it's only directly facing the Vermilion Bird Hall? Lu Ming muttered. At this moment, he had calmed down. However, the cold glint in his eyes was extremely cold. The other young men could not help but shiver when they met his gaze. Hua Kai, quickly invite the sect's alchemist over. No matter how much money I have to spend, I have to save Pang Shu. Lu Ming said coldly. I've already sent someone to invite him. He'll be here soon. Hua Kai said. That's good. I'll leave Pang Shu in your care. Lu Ming turned around and walked out. Lu Ming, you can't. There are many experts in the Star Moon Tower. You're not their match. You'll just be courting death if you go. Hua Kai called out. If I don't go, I won't be at ease. Lu Ming only left this sentence and strode away. Although Lu Ming and Pang Shu had only known each other for a few months, Pang Shu had a straightforward and honest personality. Lu Ming had long acknowledged him as the son of a hunter. Lu Ming treated him as a friend or even a brother. Now that Pang Shu had been beaten up to such a state, he could not just ignore it. Although he felt that this matter was very strange and could be a trap, he still felt that it was a trap. But, so what? As a man, there were things he should do and things he shouldn't. If he didn't, he wouldn't be at ease. Chapter 77. Chapter 77. Chapter 77 Arrogant and Despotic. 5496903339. Looking at Lu Ming's back as he left, anxiety flashed across Hua Kai's face. He thought to himself, no, Lu Ming will definitely be at a disadvantage if he goes like this. I heard that the Star Moon Tower is backed by Yaro Tianyu, a genius on the bronze ranking. No matter how strong Lu Ming is, he can't be a match for him. I'm going to look for Feng Wu. I'll ask her to look for Elder Mulan. Otherwise, Lu Ming will be in danger. Hua Kai warned the others before hurriedly leaving. Speaking of the Star Moon Tower, there was probably no one in the entire trading district who did not know of it. It was extremely famous. This was because the Star Moon Tower had the support of Yaro Tianyu, a genius on the bronze ranking. Therefore, the Star Moon Tower's strength was one of the top in the entire trading district. This was because Silivera disciples would not interfere with such ordinary trading places. They had a higher class venue. The Star Moon Tower was a 3-story building that occupied a large area. Liu Wei was a small leader in the Star Moon Tower. He had joined the Star Moon Tower for more than a year. Due to his quick-witted mind, good management skills, and ruthless methods, he had become a small leader in just over a year. At this moment, he was lazily sitting on an armchair in front of the Star Moon Tower's main entrance and looking forward. This was because there were still some people surrounding the front of the Star Moon Tower. These people were the new disciples of the Vermilion Bird Hall. These people were the same as Pang Shu and the others. They had all been scammed by the Star Moon Tower. At that moment, they were all glaring at Liu Wei, but they did not dare to say anything. This was because they had just seen with their own eyes how one of the disciples had been beaten up by the members of the Star Moon Alliance. He had almost been beaten to death. Liu Wei held a cup of tea and sipped it slowly. Looking at the newbies below, who were angry but dared not say anything, He felt a sense of satisfaction in his heart. Damn it, my materials are worth 3,000 taels of Silivera, and they only gave me 3 taels of Silivera. What's the difference between this and robbery? The disciples clenched their fists tightly and roared in their hearts. What are you all looking at? Asking for a beating, right? Hurry up and get lost. Liu Wei chided him from above. I'll leave if you return the materials to me. Finally, a thin teenager around the age of 15 could not help but call out. Oh, you still dare to ask for the materials back? Are you dreaming? Get this straight, we've already bought your materials, and we've already given you the Silivera. This is a fair trade, understand? Before Liu Wei could say anything, a lackey with a big mouth jumped out next to him and shouted. After scolding him, he sneaked a glance at Liu Wei and saw Liu Wei nodding his head secretly. He was overjoyed. It seemed that Liu Wei was very satisfied with his performance. Below, the thin young man's face was red. He clenched his fist and said, Fair? My materials are worth more than 5,000 taels of Silivera, and you're only giving me 5 taels of Silivera. I risked my life to get them, you can't do this. Oh, you still dare to talk back? I think your bones are itching. Do you want to be like that big guy from before and have all your bones broken? Our alliance master personally dealt with that one, so it'll be the same if I do it now. The minion with a big mouth sneered and walked down step by step. The skinny young man gritted his teeth and shouted, What you're doing is against the sect's rules. I'm going to lodge a complaint against you at the Law Enforcement Hall. Oh, you still want to complain about us to the Law Enforcement Hall? I think your bones are really itching. The big-mouthed minion's face was gloomy as he walked towards the thin youth. The skinny boy's face turned pale. The other new Vermilion Bird Hall disciples gritted their teeth, but none of them dared to say a word. In the distance, many disciples from other courtyards were watching the show. They were all very interested as if they were watching a good show. Don't come over. The skinny youth roared and struck out with his palm. However, he was only in the 9th grade warrior realm, while the big-mouthed lackey was an old disciple who had already reached the 3rd grade master realm. He was no match for him. With one move, the skinny young man was hit and spat out blood. He retreated continuously, but the big-mouthed minion quickly caught up and grabbed the skinny young man's neck. You still dare to attack? You're looking for a beating. The big-mouthed minion shouted coldly, then raised his other hand high and slapped the thin youth's face. He's in trouble. The new Vermilion Bird Hall disciple sighed and closed his eyes. However, the expected slap didn't sound out. The crowd fell into silence. They opened their eyes in curiosity and saw that the big-mouthed lackey's arm was being held by someone. It was a youth of about 15 years old, about the same age as them, but he was dressed in a blue robe and had a slender figure. Just by standing there, he gave off the feeling of being as unmoving as a mountain. The thin teenager was prepared to be beaten up, but he suddenly realized that the big-mouthed minion's arm was held by someone. He turned his head and saw a delicate and pretty face. However, this face was extremely cold. Lu. Senior brother Lu Ming. The thin teenager could not help but think. Who are you? You dare to block me, are you looking for death? The minion with the big mouth shouted. Me. She's just a new disciple of the Vermilion Bird Hall. Lu Ming said indifferently. A new disciple of the Vermilion Bird Hall? When he heard that Lu Ming was just a new disciple of the Vermilion Bird Hall, the big-mouthed lackey's courage was boosted. He shouted, You're just a new disciple, and you dare to grab my hand? If you don't let go, then kneel down and admit your mistake, I might spare you. Is that so? Lu Ming's lips curled into a cold smile. Trash like you, what are you still doing here? As soon as he finished speaking, Lu Ming exerted force in his palm. Catcha! The sound of bones cracking was heard. Then, there was the shrill scream of the big-mouthed minion. My hand is broken, let go of my hand. The big-mouthed minion cried out in pain. He loosened his grip on the skinny teenager and desperately tried to break Lu Ming's arm. I can let you go. Lu Ming sneered. Then, he raised his arm high and slapped it down hard. Pa! It was an extremely loud slap. With the sound of the slap, The big-mouthed young man's body was like a broken garbage bag being rolled up by the wind. He flew out with a whoosh, sticking to the ground. Everyone could also see that as he flew out, teeth mixed with blood spurted out of his mouth. The big-mouthed face collapsed and deformed. Bang! The big-mouthed minion fell heavily on the wall beside the stairs. He screamed and fainted. Cool. It felt so good. The Vermilion Bird Hall's new apprentices roared in their hearts. This slap was simply too satisfying, too satisfying. The big-mouthed minions were arrogant and despotic just now, but now they were slapped so badly. It was so satisfying that it seeped into their bones. They wished that they could transform into Lu Ming and give the big-mouthed young man a few tight slaps. At that moment, Liu Wei and the other members of the Star Moon Alliance, who were standing at the entrance of the Star Moon Tower, had their faces turn gloomy. Chapter 78. Chapter 78, Slapping His Big Mouth. 5496903339. Where did this piece of shit come from? Did you eat the guts of a leopard? How dare you hit the people of the Star and Moon Alliance? If I don't cripple you today, I'll change my surname to yours. A dark-skinned young man walked out. He had a majestic figure with bulging muscles like black iron. His eyes were cold as he glared at Lu Ming with a murderous look. Bang! He suddenly leaped from the top of the stairs. While he was in the air, his body glowed with blood-red light and a huge black bear appeared. There were 2 blood-red chakras on the black bear. With his 4th-grade master realm cultivation and the black bear bloodline, the burly young man's aura grew even stronger. Like a mountain, he pressed down on Lu Ming. This burly young man was several times stronger than the big-mouthed young man from before. Above, Liu Wei and the rest sneered. They believed that the burly young man would definitely be able to make Lu Ming suffer a great loss. How strong could a new disciple be? However, the next moment, the smiles on their faces froze. Pa! It was still a loud slap. Then, everyone saw the strong young man with an imposing manner fly back at a speed faster than when he had pounced forward. His face was deformed, and blood mixed with teeth flew everywhere. His body fell heavily to the ground, and with a scream, he followed in the footsteps of the big-mouthed young man and fainted. Sigh. Liu Wei and the other members of the Star Moon Alliance could not help but gasp. No matter how arrogant they were, they could tell that Lu Ming was an expert. However, since when was there such a powerful master among the new Vermilion Bird Hall disciples? Could it be? Liu Wei's expression changed. He slowly stood up from his chair and asked, "Speak, who are you?" "Senior brother Lu Ming, well done." At that moment, the skinny youth shouted in excitement. Although the new Vermilion Bird Hall disciples had seen Lu Ming earlier, everything had happened so quickly that they did not even have the time to call out his name. Lu Ming. The newcomer king, Lu Ming. On the steps, the expressions of the other members of the Star Moon Alliance changed slightly. To some people, the newcomer king still had some weight, especially 2 months ago when Lu Ming had defeated Ning Feng. So it was him? Not far away, the other senior disciples of the 4 courtyards suddenly understood. It was no wonder that among this year's newcomers, only Lu Ming had the ability and the guts to send 2 members of the Star and Moon Alliance flying in front of the door. Lu Ming, it's really you? But let me tell you, even though you're the newcomer king, you're still too young to cause trouble in the Star Moon Alliance. Liu Wei's eyes flashed as he said coldly. A cold smile hung on the corners of Lu Ming's mouth. Step by step, he ascended the steps and walked towards Liu Wei and the rest. Lu Ming, what do you want to do? Do you really dare to go against the Star Moon Alliance? You have to think carefully. The leader of the Star Moon Alliance, Chen Yueshing, is a master on the verge of reaching the 9th grade. I might as well tell you that behind her is senior brother Yarou Tianyu, who is on the bronze ranking. If you dare to act rashly, you'll be doomed eternally. Liu Wei shouted with an ugly expression. Lu Ming's figure paused and he stopped in his tracks. Yarou Tianyu, it's Yarou Tianyu. Lu Ming's eyes flickered with a shocking murderous intent. At this moment, on the 3rd floor of the Star Moon Tower, a few young men were observing the situation below. One of them was wearing a long robe with stars and moon emblazoned on it. This person was the leader of the Star-Moon Alliance, Chen Yueshing. "Alliance Master, aren't you going to make a move now?" one of the young men asked. "There's no need for us to do anything. Just let Lu Ming do whatever he wants. It's worth it for trash like Liu Wei and the others to be beaten up. Senior brother Yarou Tianyu and the people from the Tribunal Council will be here soon. At that time, we can seize the opportunity to take down Lu Ming." Chen Yueshing smiled faintly. In his eyes, Liu Wei and the others were just pawns that he could use. Alliance Master is wise. The other young men took the opportunity to flatter him. Below, Liu Wei saw that Lu Ming had stopped. He thought that Lu Ming was afraid of Yarou Tianyu's reputation. He immediately looked smug and shouted, "Lu Ming, you've slapped 2 members of the Star-Moon Alliance. This is equivalent to smashing the Star-Moon Alliance's reputation. It's a serious crime. How about this? Take out 2,000 contribution points, no, 5,000 contribution points as medical expenses and apologize in public. I'll consider sparing you." "Oh, really? You sure are confident." Lu Ming continued to walk forward, step by step. Liu Wei's expression changed again as he shouted, "Lu Ming, what do you want to do? I'm warning you, stop right now." However, Lu Ming had no intention of stopping. He continued to walk toward Liu Wei step by step. Cold sweat began to form on Liu Wei's face. He suddenly shouted, "Go, all together, cripple him." Buzz. And NBSB, whoosh. Immediately, more than a dozen young men behind Liu Wei rushed forward. Beams of blood-red light flashed. These young men chose to activate their bloodline without hesitation. "Get back to where you came from." Lu Ming waved his hand and slapped it. A series of loud slaps resounded in the air. The Star-Moon Alliance members who had rushed over were sent flying back at a speed faster than when they had come. All of them fell to the ground, screaming in pain. Blood and teeth were spurted all over the ground. From the beginning to the end, Lu Ming only waved his hand, as if he was swatting flies, and the members of the Star-Moon Alliance were sent flying. Sigh sigh. A series of gasps could be heard. The disciples of the 4 courtyards were all dumbfounded. The new Vermilion Bird Hall disciples were especially excited. They were all trembling. So strong. Lu Ming has become stronger again. This is a genius, a true super genius. Shenzhen sect, you only see him once in a few years. Some of the senior disciples said with complicated expressions. All of a sudden, Liu Wei was the only one left at the gate of the Star-Moon Tower. He was so frightened that his face turned pale. He stared at Lu Ming, his body trembling. "Lu Ming, I'm warning you. Don't do anything rash." Liu Wei's voice trembled. However, Lu Ming did not look at him. Instead, he lifted his head to look at the entire Star-Moon Tower and mumbled, "The Star-Moon Tower no longer needs to exist." Boom. Then, Lu Ming threw a punch at a pillar at the side. Boom. The pillar was made of extremely hard black ironwood. However, under Lu Ming's punch, it exploded into pieces, sending wood chips flying in all directions. Bang. After that, Lu Ming moved and blasted another pillar. With the same boom, the pillar was smashed into pieces. Kaka. After 2 pillars were broken, the entire Star-Moon Tower started to shake and made cracking sounds. Lu Ming, you're crazy. What are you doing? Stop it, stop it." Liu Wei's face turned deathly pale, and he started to scream madly. On the 3rd floor, Chen Yueshing could no longer remain calm. She shouted madly, damn it, what is this guy trying to do?" However, Lu Ming had no intention of stopping. The sound of a sword rang out as he unsheathed his long sword. He continuously slashed out a few sword chis towards the pillars at the side of the Star-Moon Tower. The sword chi whistled and was extremely sharp. It directly cut down 4 pillars on the left and right. Chapter 79. Chapter 79. Chapter 79 Tearing Down the Star-Moon Tower. 5496903339. The Star-Moon Tower had used a total of 8 pillars. Lu Ming had broken 6 of them consecutively, leaving only the last 2 pillars. Even with the support of the two walls, the Star Moon Tower started to shake violently, making cracking sounds. Lu Ming, you should die. You should die. A furious roar came from the third floor, and then a few figures jumped down. It's Chen Yueshing. The leader of the Star Moon Alliance, Chen Yueshing, has finally come out. Someone shouted. At this moment, Chen Yueshing's face was twisted. She glared at Lu Ming and shouted, Lu Ming, how dare you destroy the Star Moon Tower? Today, I will break every bone in your body and break every vein in your body. I will turn you into a useless person who is worse than a pig or a dog. Lu Ming's means were completely beyond his expectations. He had thought that no matter how strong Lu Ming was, it would take some effort for him to beat Liu Wei and the rest. By then, Yarrow Tianyu had already arrived with the people from the Law Enforcement Hall. However, he had never expected that Lu Ming's combat strength had far exceeded his expectations. At the same time, his ruthlessness and boldness had completely exceeded his expectations. Lu Ming actually wanted to tear down the Star Moon Tower. This was his blood, sweat, and tears, so he had no choice but to show himself. Lu Ming did not say a word. He only looked at Chen Yueshing coldly. Lu Ming, I don't mind telling you this. I was the one who broke all the bones in your friend's body. Now, I'm going to let you go and accompany your friend. Chen Yueshing's face was twisted with killing intent. The aura from her body was as heavy as a mountain. Late 8th grade Master Realm. This was Chen Yueshing's strength. She was extremely powerful, much more powerful than Ning Feng. Otherwise, she would not have been able to open the Star Moon Tower and control the Star Moon Alliance. At the bottom of the stairs, the Vermilion Bird Hall's new apprentices were suppressed by this aura. Their faces turned pale and they retreated. Lu Ming, I admit that you're very powerful. However, it's still too early for you to challenge me. Today, I'll teach you how to be a human for free. You must keep a low profile. When you meet someone you can't defeat, you must tuck your tail between your legs and behave. Boom. As she spoke, Chen Yueshing's aura grew even stronger. Chen Yueshing's bloodline was at the 4th level. At this moment, Chen Yueshing's strength had reached the peak of the 8th grade Master Realm. Lightning Claw. Buzz. Chen Yueshing took a step forward and with a swoosh, she was in front of Lu Ming. The claws that were as sharp as knives clawed at Lu Ming wildly. In an instant, he had struck out at least 20 times. However, Lu Ming was faster. The sound of a sword rang out. In an instant, dozens of sword lights bloomed from Lu Ming's hands. It was extremely dazzling. Kai Kai. The sword chi whistled, the claw force crossed, and a strong wind gushed out in all directions. The new Vermilion Bird Hall disciples nearby kept retreating. Bang! Bang! Some of the chi flew out and hit the walls of the Star Moon Tower, causing the Star Moon Tower to shake even more. Ah! Suddenly, there was a scream and a figure retreated. It was Chen Yueshing. A deep sword gash appeared on his shoulder, almost cutting off one of his arms. The surrounding spectators were all shocked. In less than 10 moves, Chen Yueshing had been defeated and forced to retreat with heavy injuries. Attack! Chen Yueshing roared. His heart was twitching in fear. Buzz! Buzz! The few young men who were with him rushed toward Lu Ming. As for Chen Yueshing, she was actually running away. He wanted to escape. Chen Yueshing, don't even think about running. Die! Lu Ming roared. His sword glowed brightly and it was extremely sharp. Whoosh! Whoosh! The few young men were instantly sent flying. They flew far away and crashed heavily into the wall of the Star Moon Tower. Boom! 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 This time, the Star Moon Tower could no longer hold on and collapsed. Quickly retreat! Some of the disciples of the 4 courtyards who were close to him turned pale with fright and quickly retreated. Boom! 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 The entire Star Moon Tower collapsed, stirring up dust. Lu Ming's body was as fast as lightning as he dashed toward Chen Yueshing. Chen Yueshing was severely injured and her speed was greatly reduced. In a few breaths, Lu Ming had caught up to her. Lu Ming, wait a minute. We can discuss this further. What do you want? I can give you anything. Seeing that she could not escape, Chen Yueshing stopped and started to plead. At the same time, she wanted to use her benefits to stabilize Lu Ming. At the same time, he kept thinking, soon, soon. Senior brother Yarou Tianyu and the others will be here soon. When they arrive, Lu Ming, I'll see how you die. I want revenge 10 times, 100 times more. What do I want? The cold smile on Lu Ming's lips grew wider. What I want is very simple. I just want you to use twice the amount of what you have used on my brother, Pang Shi. Boom. He threw a punch at Chen Yueshing's stomach. With a crack, a few of her ribs were broken. She was sent flying and coughed up blood. Next, it's your 4 limbs. Lu Ming's eyes were cold as he walked to Chen Yueshing's side. No, don't. Chen Yueshing shouted. Stop. At this time, a furious roar suddenly came from the distance. At the same time buzz, and NBSB, whoosh. One figure after another rushed over. The enforcement palace, it's the people from the enforcement palace. The leader is Yarou Tianyu. It's over. This time, Lu Ming is finished. The surrounding senior disciples cried out in surprise when they saw these people rushing over. Of course, some people were surprised, a few were worried, but most of them were gloating. The tribunal council was established by the 4 great halls. Each hall would select a few people to join the tribunal council to maintain the order of the mystical sword sect. Senior brother Lu Ming, the enforcement hall is here. Let's go. The skinny teenager who was saved by Lu Ming earlier shouted. Ha ha ha, the people from the tribunal council are here. Senior brother Yarou Tianyu is here. Lu Ming, you're finished. How dare you break my ribs? I'll make you pay 10 times or 100 times more. Chen Yueshing's arrogance was completely restored as soon as the people from the tribunal council arrived. She called out coldly. Law Enforcement Hall? Hee, no one will be able to save you today. Lu Ming's eyes were still cold. He was unmoved. He raised his foot and stomped on Chen Yueshing's leg. The arrogance on Chen Yueshing's face disappeared and was replaced by endless fear. She wailed, no, don't. Catcher. Lu Ming stomped his foot heavily on Chen Yueshing's leg. The bone in her leg was broken into several pieces by Lu Ming's essential qi. My leg. Senior brother Yarou, save me. Chen Yueshing wailed. Bang, bang. Lu Ming's legs were as fast as lightning and he stomped 2 more times. These 2 feet were on Chen Yueshing's other leg and arm. Chen Yueshing's leg and hand bones broke into several pieces. At this moment, the people from the law enforcement hall finally arrived and surrounded Lu Ming. Chapter 80. Chapter 80. What's there to be afraid of? 549690339. I told you to stop, did you not hear me? The person in the lead was about 17 years old. In a casual battle, he was as unmoving as a mountain. His aura was oppressive, and his eyes were filled with killing intent, like a wolf or a tiger. It's really Yarou Tianyu. He's here personally. Low exclamations spread out in the surroundings. Lu Ming raised his eyebrows. So this teenager was Yarou Tianyu. I heard you, but why should I stop? He said calmly, his face still calm. How dare you speak to senior brother Yarou like that? Lu Ming, what's with your attitude? As soon as Lu Ming finished speaking, a few youths from the law enforcement hall shouted. Lu Ming pursed his lips and could not be bothered. Lu Ming, you attacked a fellow disciple for no reason. Your methods are vicious and vicious. You're simply insane. This is a serious violation of the sect rules. Now, you're going to chain yourself and follow us back to the law enforcement hall to accept your punishment. A young man in a red robe walked out and shouted. Then, with a clang, he threw a thick chain in front of Lu Ming. That's right. Lu Ming, surrender and listen to the punishment. The other youths from the tribunal council also shouted. I broke the sect rules. Why don't you ask me why I made a move? Lu Ming sneered. You don't have to ask much about this. Anyway, we saw you attack and severely injure your fellow disciples. You even destroyed the Star Moon Tower. This is a serious crime. The red-robed youth concluded. Hihi, let me tell you now that I am not guilty. I am only punishing the sect's vermin. The Star Moon Tower used an extremely low price to forcefully buy the materials of the new disciples. Once they refused, they would deal a heavy blow. One of my friends is still unconscious. Why don't you guys investigate this? Lu Ming said coldly. Nonsense, he's slandering us. There's no such thing. Senior brother Yao, you have to help me. Chen Yueshing's cultivation level was high, so she didn't faint. She cried out loudly. Slander. Do you think the others are blind? Lu Ming said. Oh. The red-robed young man turned to the young men from the Vermilion Bird Hall and said, Who among you saw the Star Moon Tower forcefully buying materials? He even attacked and injured someone? But I'm warning you, you'd better think carefully before you speak. Don't talk nonsense, be careful of trouble coming from your mouth. A threat. This was an undisguised threat. The new Vermilion Bird Hall disciples were about to tell the truth, but their expressions changed when they heard this. As for Yao Tianyu, he stood at the side. Although he did not say anything, his aura was overbearing. When he casually swept his gaze over the crowd, the disciples' faces turned even uglier. For a moment, no one dared to speak. Yao Tianyu's lips curled into a sneer. The other disciples of the Tribunal Council followed suit. The red-robed youth said, Lu Ming, it seems like no one can testify for you. What else do you have to say now? Why aren't you surrendering? Hee. Lu Ming sneered and swept his gaze across the new Vermilion Bird Hall disciples. When they saw Lu Ming's gaze, they blushed and lowered their heads in shame. But still, no one spoke. Lu Ming, what are you looking at? Was he trying to threaten them? With the Tribunal Council here, don't even think about it. Why don't you surrender? Was he trying to resist? Brothers, get ready to attack. The red-robed young man shouted, his eyes flashing with ruthlessness. A few days ago, he went to summon Lu Ming and was thrown out of the door by Lu Ming. He regarded it as a great humiliation. Law Enforcement Hall? What bullshit enforcement hall? I've learned something today. If you want to make a move, then do it. It's impossible for me to surrender. I, Lu Ming, am not afraid of a battle. Lu Ming held the long sword in his hand and stood proudly. His slender figure was like a tall and straight mountain peak, full of unyielding and unswerving determination. Before he came here today, he had already thought that Yao Tianyu might be behind all this, even though he knew that he had almost no chance of winning against those on the bronze list with his current cultivation. But he still came and did it. This was his heart. He would do what he wanted to do and what he should do. At worst, they would just fight a bloody battle. Looking at Lu Ming's figure, the new Vermilion Bird Hall disciples felt even more ashamed. Wait a minute. Suddenly, a voice was heard. The skinny young man who was saved by Lu Ming earlier clenched his fists tightly. His face was flushed and his body was trembling. He strode out. I can be a witness. What senior brother Lu Ming said is true. The Star Moon Tower forcefully bought the materials of the Vermilion Bird Hall's new disciples. They only gave 1 tael of Silivera for the 1,000 taels worth of items. If they don't obey, they will give them a good beating. There was a senior who refused to obey. He argued with Chen Yueshing and Chen Yueshing broke his bones. He was seriously injured and fell unconscious. Senior brother Lu Ming only attacked because he stood up for us. He did not break any sect rules. Don't. The skinny youth shouted, his voice spreading far and wide. Shut up, how dare you? The red-robed young man suddenly shouted, interrupting the skinny young man's next words. He then stared coldly at the skinny youth and said in a deep voice, Brat, how dare you? I can tell that you're Lu Ming's accomplice. How dare you help Lu Ming to bring disaster to the sect? You even tried to deceive the Law Enforcement Hall. Your crime is unforgivable. Today, you're with Lu Ming, so you can't escape your punishment. The skinny young man's face turned pale and his voice trembled. No, you can't do this. I'm telling the truth. No need to talk nonsense, attack. At this moment, Yao Tianyu finally opened his mouth. He was decisive and direct. Junior brother, you should step back. Lu Ming waved his palm and essential qi gushed out. The thin teenager retreated into the crowd. Lu Ming was facing the law enforcement hall alone. He didn't say anything, but the unyielding battle intent on his body explained everything. Fight to the end. Let's attack together and take down Lu Ming. It's fine as long as we don't kill him. The red-robed youth shouted. Buzz. And NBSB, whoosh. At that moment, more than 10 youths from the law enforcement hall pounced on Lu Ming. The sword qi, palm wind, and fist force instantly enveloped Lu Ming's entire body. The disciples of the Tribunal Council were all very strong. Even the weakest of them was a 6th-grade Master Realm. Ultimate flowing light. Buzz. The sound of the sword rang out, and the sword light burst forth. The sword qi burst out. Lu Ming charged into the crowd. Clang, clang, boom, boom. The sounds of clashing and explosions rang out. Then, a few figures retreated. It was the disciples of the Tribunal Council. They had all been stabbed in the chest with a wound that went straight to their bones. They fell heavily to the ground and coughed up large mouthfuls of blood. The disciples of the 4 courtyards were shocked. Lu Ming was too domineering. Not only did he start a war with the people of the law enforcement hall, but he also injured a few experts of the law enforcement hall in one move. Strong, he was too strong. One had to know that there were many 8th-grade Master Realm experts in the Tribunal Council. Let's go together, the red-robed young man shouted from the side. Buzz. And NBSB, whoosh. More enforcement hall disciples rushed toward Lu Ming. This time, there were over 30 enforcement palace disciples. Kill. Lu Ming roared with an imposing manner. He had his eyes on the red-robed disciple and rushed in that direction. Chapter 81. Chapter 81. The Power of 8 Consecutive Wins. 5496903339. However, he was surrounded by nearly 30 enforcement palace disciples. In an instant, all kinds of attacks were launched at Lu Ming. There was no way to dodge. Bloodline explosion. Lu Ming did not hesitate and immediately activated his blood meridian. Lu Ming's blood meridian exploded and his combat strength increased by a large margin. He directly ignored most of the attacks. As long as he avoided the physical attacks of the long sword and the saber, he would be fine. Boom, boom, boom. Streams of sword qi, saber qi, and fist force all landed on Lu Ming's body. However, Lu Ming's body only swayed slightly, and he continued to slash out with the star sword. The lustrous sword technique was extremely fast, and he slashed dozens of times in an instant. Ah! Ah! Screams rang out continuously as 7 to 8 figures were sent flying. All of them were heavily injured and fell to the ground. Kill. Lu Ming was in a frenzy. The essential qi in his body was so condensed that it was almost tangible, and it burst out continuously. His blood meridian level was currently at level 4, and the time for his blood meridian to burst out was only 5 breaths. In these 5 breaths, he was extremely powerful. Whoosh, whoosh. The heavenly star sword kept slashing out, and the screams continued. One figure after another kept flying out. Bang, bang. The disciples of the Tribunal Council were like sandbags as they fell to the ground one after another. The surrounding disciples of the 4 courtyards were so shocked that their eyes almost popped out. Monster, monster, isn't Lu Ming too powerful? How long has he been in the sect? And did you guys see that? He actually ignored the attacks. He must have some kind of defensive treasure on him. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to withstand so many attacks. That's right. There must be a defensive treasure. Lu Ming is actually not that powerful. He relied on the defensive treasure to catch the law enforcement hall off guard. Look, he's injured. The senior disciples of the 4 courtyards were in a heated discussion. Although they felt that Lu Ming must have relied on a defensive treasure, their eyes were still filled with shock. Poochie. Lu Ming spat out a mouthful of blood. 5 breaths had passed, and more than 20 enforcement palace's disciples had been severely injured by him. They were no longer able to fight. However, he had taken so many attacks head-on. Even though he had devoured half of the attacks, he was still injured. He's injured, kill him. The remaining enforcement hall disciples roared and continued to pounce on Lu Ming. Clang. A tall and thin young man exchanged a blow with Lu Ming. Lu Ming trembled and could not help but take a step back. Ninth grade Master Realm. Finally, a ninth grade Master Realm expert from the Tribunal Council made his move. As soon as Lu Ming retreated, the rest of the people rushed forward. During this entire process, Yarou Tianyu had no intention of making a move. He continued to stand at the side, watching coldly. It seemed that Lu Ming was not worthy of him to take action personally. Beside Yarou Tianyu, there was another young man. He was as strong as an iron tower, but he did not make a move either. So what if you're a ninth grade Master Realm? Kill. Lu Ming attacked more than 10 times in a row, forcing the others to retreat. Then, he fought with the ninth grade Master Realm expert. In an instant, the two exchanged more than a dozen moves. Ting. Thump. After a dozen moves, the ninth grade Master Realm youth's expression changed drastically and he retreated a dozen steps. Buzz. Lu Ming took a step forward and rushed toward the red-robed young man. Now, it's your turn. Lu Ming's eyes were cold and murderous. The red-robed youth was scared out of his wits. So many Tribunal Council experts and they could not stop Lu Ming? How was this possible? Senior brother Yarou, save me, he couldn't help but shout. Yarou Tianyu frowned and said, He Tai, attack. Yes. The iron tower-like young man behind him responded, and then he stomped on the ground. Boom. The ground shook, and the hard floor cracked. The iron tower youth's body was shot out like a cannonball. Fast, extremely fast. He was even faster than Lu Ming when he used the dragon serpent steps. He was near Lu Ming in an instant. He threw a punch, and the violent fist force surged toward Lu Ming. So strong. Lu Ming's heart trembled. The iron tower young man's punch gave him an extremely dangerous feeling. Without any hesitation, he used all his true chi and slashed at the iron tower young man. Boom. The iron tower young man's fist heavily hit the star sword. In that instant, Lu Ming felt as if he had been hit by a huge mountain. The force was unstoppable. Lu Ming's body shook violently and he was sent flying. Lu Ming flew more than 10 meters before landing on the ground. Then, he took 8 steps back. With each step, the floor cracked and rumbled. After 8 steps, Lu Ming finally stopped and spat out a mouthful of blood. He Tai, it's He Tai who made a move. He Tai is a genius expert who won 8 consecutive victories on the bronze platform. He's not far from the bronze ranking. With him, Lu Ming is doomed this time. That's right. Lu Ming and He Tai are too different. Seeing the Iron Tower youth's attack, someone cried out in shock. 8 consecutive wins on the bronze platform? It is indeed powerful. Lu Ming looked at He Tai, who was in front of him, with a grave expression. If the disciples of the mystical sword sect wanted to enter the bronze ranking, they had to go up to the bronze platform and accept challenges. Only those who won 10 consecutive rounds could be ranked on the bronze list. He Tai, on the other hand, had already won 8 matches in a row. He only needed to win 2 more times in a row before he could enter the bronze rank. Of course, it wasn't that easy, because the further one went, the more difficult it would be, and the stronger the people they would meet. But 8 consecutive wins, his strength was also very strong. It's not bad that you can take a punch from me, but I advise you to surrender. You and I are far apart. He Tai said indifferently. Haha, if you want to fight, then fight. You want me to surrender without putting up a fight? Impossible. Lu Ming wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth and laughed. You're so stubborn. Boom. He Tai charged at Lu Ming and threw another punch. This punch was even more powerful than the previous one. Lu Ming's pupils constricted. He did not take the attack head-on. Instead, he used the dragon serpent steps and dodged to the side. You can't avoid it. He Tai stomped on the ground heavily, causing the floor to crack. He was like a wild beast, charging towards Lu Ming. He threw another punch. It was extremely fast. He could not avoid this punch. If he couldn't avoid it, then he would take it head-on. Lu Ming circulated the true war dragon technique to the extreme. His essential chi surged wildly as he slashed out. The heavenly star sword and He Tai's fist collided once again. Boom! Lu Ming's sword aura was defeated in an instant. The difference was too great. They were not even on the same level. He Tai's combat strength was too strong. Although he was also a 9th grade master, ordinary 9th grade master realm cultivators were trash in front of him. He could defeat them with a single punch. With Lu Ming's current combat strength, he could definitely fight an ordinary 9th grade master realm expert without activating his blood meridian. However, he was still far from He Tai. Bang! Lu Ming was sent flying backward. He slid for dozens of meters before he stopped. Lu Ming spat out a few mouthfuls of blood. His face was pale and his body was staggering as if he could fall down at any moment. Is this the strength of a true genius of the mystical sword sect? It's really powerful. Lu Ming secretly sighed. Chapter 82. Chapter 82. Chapter 82. Persistent Battle. 5496903339. During the newbie trial, he had defeated all the other geniuses and won the newbie king title. At that time, he thought that the other geniuses were only SOSO, but now that he thought about it, he was wrong. The other geniuses among the newcomers weren't too weak. They were just too young and immature. They just hadn't matured yet. Perhaps in a few years, some people would also grow to be very powerful. Capture him. He Tai waved his hand and said. Lu Ming was already seriously injured. He did not need to do anything. Let's see how you're going to resist now. The remaining dozen or so enforcement hall disciples walked toward Lu Ming with ferocious looks on their faces. Lu Ming had injured more than 20 of them. They were both fearful and hateful of Lu Ming. Hee. Lu Ming supported himself with his long sword. He scanned his surroundings and sneered. What are you laughing at? You'll get it when we get to the law enforcement palace. A skinny monkey-like young man laughed hideously and clawed at Lu Ming's head. He wanted to press Lu Ming's head to the ground and humiliate him. But dash. Whoosh. A sword light flashed, and a few streams of blood shot out. There were 5 fingers in the blood. Skinny Monkey looked at his bare palm in a daze, then let out a heart-wrenching scream. Ah, my finger. Lu Ming, I want you to die. Of course, Lu Ming was the one who slashed her just now. Go, let's attack together. The others roared. There were 10 of them, including a 9th grade master realm expert. One attack after another was directed at Lu Ming. Lu Ming raised his essential chi with great effort and waved his sword to block the attack. Clang, clang. After a few consecutive moves, Lu Ming's body kept retreating. With a swish, he was struck by a sword and blood immediately flowed out. Lu Ming, lie down and surrender. A young man from the tribunal council shouted. In your dreams. The only response they got was 2 simple words. Then I'll beat you until you lie down. Whoosh. Whoosh. The attacks continued to surge toward Lu Ming. These tribunal council disciples were all experts. At this time, Lu Ming was severely injured and it was difficult for him to withstand the attacks. After a few moves, a few more wounds appeared on his body and blood flowed out. Lu Ming's entire body was stained red with blood. His steps were light and he seemed to be on the verge of collapsing. However, he still stood tall and straight. His eyes were still firm and persistent. At this moment, the entire place was silent, and the air seemed to have frozen at this moment. No one spoke as they stared at the figure in a daze. Senior brother Lu Ming. The new Vermilion Bird Hall disciples clenched their fists and their eyes turned red. Their eyes were filled with guilt. They felt guilty for not standing up for them earlier. They all knew that the reason why Lu Ming came here and tore down the Star Moon Tower was to avenge Pang Shi. For his friends, for his brothers, to be able to do this, this was a true man, a true man. Compared to Lu Ming, they felt that they were too inferior. Stop, stop. The skinny youth roared and suddenly charged forward. Pa. The red-robed young man suddenly rushed out and slapped the thin young man, sending him flying. He said arrogantly, "Get lost, you'll get it later." Then, he looked at Lu Ming and laughed. Lu Ming, weren't you very arrogant just now? Why? Now I can't, I don't have any strength. Come and hit me, haha. Bang. As soon as the red-robed young man finished speaking, he was slapped hard on the face. This slap was extremely loud and extremely ruthless. The red-robed young man's body spun a few times before coming to a stop. One side of his face was almost smashed, and blood was spurting out of his teeth. He was so stunned that he even forgot to scream. He looked at the person who hit him in a daze. It was a woman, an extremely alluring and sexy woman with an extremely good figure. However, her expression was extremely cold. Mulan. A name flashed through the red-robed youth's mind. Mulan had finally arrived. No one could see how she had arrived. Since you're asking for a beating, I'll definitely fulfill your wish. Mulan's cold voice was heard. She then waved her hand. Pa. Another slap landed on the other side of the red-robed young man's face. Blood was still spurting out because all the teeth had been spat out. The red-robed young man did not fly out. He was pulled by a force and spun a dozen times on the spot before he stopped. It was clear how powerful the slap was. The moment he stopped, he saw Mulan's cold face again. His heart trembled and he almost peed his pants. He shouted, "Fu Xiao Ah." His mouth was leaking air, and he couldn't even speak clearly. Get lost. Bang. Mulan kicked the red-robed young man and sent him flying more than 10 meters. He screamed and fainted. Not far away, Yarou Tianyu, who had been very calm all this while, was no longer calm. He looked at Mulan with a grave expression. The people from the law enforcement hall did not dare to make a move either. They looked at Mulan with a grave expression. Mulan did not even look at the others. She walked to Lu Ming's side and said with a concerned expression, "Are you all right?" "It's fine, I won't die yet. I owe you another favor this time." Lu Ming smiled faintly. "You can still smile? Quickly take this pill." Mulan took out a pill and passed it to Lu Ming. Lu Ming did not stand on ceremony. He took it and swallowed it in one mouthful. The pill melted in his mouth and turned into waves of energy that permeated Lu Ming's entire body. His wound quickly stopped bleeding. Such a strong medicinal effect. This healing medicinal pill's grade was definitely not low. At this moment, Mulan turned to Yarou Tianyu and said coldly, "You're good, you dare to attack the Vermilion Bird Hall's disciples." Elder Mulan. Yarou Tianyu's expression turned ugly. He cupped his fists and said, "Elder Mulan, we're enforcing the law impartially." Lu Ming relied on his high cultivation base to injure dozens of people from the Star Moon Tower for no reason. He even forcefully demolished the Star Moon Tower. Of course, the law enforcement hall has to severely punish such an unruly and reckless disciple. But Lu Ming is insane. Not only did he resist arrest, but he also injured so many people from the law enforcement hall. Elder Mulan, as the chief elder of the Vermilion Bird Hall, I hope you won't shield him. Nonsense. The skinny youth's face was swollen after being slapped by the red-robed youth. He walked out resolutely and said, "It's obvious that the Star Moon Tower forcefully bought the materials for the Vermilion Bird Hall's new apprentices. They even beat people up. Senior brother Lu Ming is fighting for us and seeking justice. How is this against the sect rules?" "That's right, senior brother Lu Ming is seeking justice for us." A few more new Vermilion Bird Hall disciples walked out. With Mulan's arrival, they were emboldened and couldn't hold it in any longer, so they told the truth. "You're talking nonsense. How could the Star Moon Tower do such a thing?" Yarou Tianyu asked in a low voice. "If they did, the Tribunal Council would have punished them long ago. Moreover, you said that you only bought the Vermilion Bird Hall by force. That's even more ridiculous. Does the Star Moon Tower have any enmity with the Vermilion Bird Hall? I think it's obvious that the few of you are in cahoots with Lu Ming. You want to frame the Star Moon Tower." Chapter 83. Chapter 83. Chapter 83 Not Qualified. 5496903339. No, we're just telling the truth. The Vermilion Bird Hall disciples quickly explained. "All right, I'm done." Mulan waved her hand, then looked at Yarou Tianyu and said, "Now, I'll tell you clearly. I don't care who Lu Ming hit or whose house he demolished. I don't care about all these. If I say that Lu Ming is innocent, he is innocent. If I say he's not guilty, he's not guilty. So domineering, so overbearing. This was Mulan. She was completely unreasonable when she was domineering. You. Instantly, Yarrow Tianyu's face turned red and he almost suffered internal injuries. Mulan didn't play by the rules at all, yet he couldn't do anything to her. Elder Mulan, even though you're an elder of the Vermilion Bird Hall and the granddaughter of Dean Yang, you can't just use your power to bully others, can you? There are so many disciples here watching. After holding it in for a long time, Yarrow Tianyu finally managed to squeeze out this sentence. I'm just bullying people, so what? Mulan replied indifferently. Yarrow Tianyu trembled in anger. Good, good. If that's the case, I'll report this to the elders of the Tribunal Council. Let's go. Mulan's arrival was extremely domineering. Yarrow Tianyu knew that it was impossible to take down Lu Ming today. After leaving behind a harsh sentence, he turned around and left. Who said you can leave? Mulan's cold voice was heard. Yarrow Tianyu's figure paused. He looked at Mulan and gritted his teeth. Elder Mulan, what's your order? You injured him and want to leave just like that, isn't that too easy? Leave behind the medical expenses. I think it will take at least 1 or 2 million taels of Silivera to fully recover from this kind of injury. Mulan's gaze wandered all over Lu Ming as she said slowly. Medical expenses? 1 or 2 million taels? All around, the onlookers were stunned. Some of them dug their ears hard, thinking that they had heard wrong. Even Lu Ming was in a daze. Mulan was asking for an exorbitant price. As expected, Yarrow Tianyu couldn't hold it in any longer and roared, medical expenses? Mulan, don't go too far. Lu Ming injured so many of our people. I didn't even ask him for medical fees, and you're asking me for it. Impossible, I'm telling you, it's impossible. Injured your people? They deserve it. Let me tell you, if you don't pay for the medical expenses today, I don't mind breaking your bones one by one. Mulan said coldly. He was too domineering and overbearing. He did not give Yarrow Tianyu any face at all. No, it was not that he did not give Yarrow Tianyu any face, but he did not put him in his eyes at all. Yarrow Tianyu's expression was extremely ugly. Although he was a genius on the bronze rank, he was only a bronze disciple. If he were to fight Mulan, he would definitely be killed with a single slap. His face turned green and white. If he were to give in today and pay for the medical expenses, he would really lose all his face. Haha, niece Mulan, in my opinion, let's just drop this matter. At this moment, a deep voice was heard. A figure descended from the sky. It was an old man in his 60s. He was wearing a Silivera robe and had a kind smile on his face. He was a Silivera-robed elder. Upon seeing the old man, Yarrow Tianyu was overjoyed and shouted, Elder Ming, you must seek justice for this disciple. Elder Mulan has gone too far. This Silivera-robed elder was from the Azure Dragon Hall. Mulan's expression darkened as well. She said, Old man Ming, I advise you not to meddle in other people's business. The people in the surroundings were dumbfounded again. Mulan was too awesome, wasn't she? She called a Silivera-robed elder an old man. However, Elder Ming did not show any signs of anger. He still smiled and said, I have already heard about the entire incident. I think that there is a huge misunderstanding. According to my speculation, the Star Moon Tower is the one who is in the wrong. The Star Moon Tower forcefully bought their disciples' materials. Lu Ming fought for justice and injured their disciples. As members of the enforcement hall, Yarrow Tianyu and the rest naturally had to question Lu Ming when they saw him injuring someone. This caused a fight. This is a complete misunderstanding. Since both parties have people injured, I think we should just let this matter go. Lu Ming's heart trembled. Elder Ming was sacrificing the war chariot to protect the general. This Elder Ming looked kind, but in fact, he was a cunning old fox. He pushed all the blame to the Star Moon Tower with just one sentence. In this way, Yarrow Tianyu would not have to pay for the medical expenses, and Yarou Tianyu and the others would have nothing to say to the elder of the tribunal council. Yarou Tianyu's face darkened, but he did not say anything. If this matter was really investigated, it would be impossible to hide the fact that the Star Moon Tower had forcefully bought the materials for the Vermilion Bird Hall's new disciples. Therefore, it would be good if they could push the blame on the Star Moon Tower. Mu Lan's eyes flickered. This Elder Ming was a Silivra-robed elder. If he was bent on protecting Yarou Tianyu, she would be helpless. Oh! Since it's the Star Moon Tower's fault, they must be severely punished. Otherwise, the disciples of the 4 courtyards will not be convinced. Mu Lan's eyes flickered before she smiled. Of course. The Star Moon Tower will definitely punish them severely. All the materials will also be returned. Elder Ming smiled, then said to Yarou Tianyu, "Tianyu, why haven't you brought the disciples of the Tribunal Council back to recuperate yet?" "Yes." Yarou Tianyu cupped his fists and ordered the uninjured disciples to help the injured disciples back to their rooms. Lu Ming. Then, Yarou Tianyu cast a cold glance at Lu Ming, turned around, and left. "Yarou Tianyu!" Lu Ming suddenly called out. Yarou Tianyu stopped in his tracks. He turned around and glared at Lu Ming coldly. Lu Ming's eyes glowed as he stared at Yarou Tianyu. "Yarou Tianyu, what kind of skill do you have to call these minions to attack me? I'm challenging you right now. Do you dare to accept my challenge?" As soon as he said that, the entire place fell into silence. Lu Ming actually challenged Yarou Tianyu? How was that possible? How could he be a match for Yarou Tianyu? "You want to challenge me?" Yarou Tianyu retorted. "Not bad, yes." Lu Ming replied firmly. Yarou Tianyu's lips curled into a mocking smile as he said disdainfully, "Lu Ming, I'm a disciple on the bronze ranking. What right do you have to challenge me? You can challenge me after you've made it to the bronze rank. You're not qualified to do so now." Yarou Tianyu's eyes were filled with arrogance and disdain. With that, he turned around and left. Lu Ming's eyes narrowed. "Are you disdainful to accept my challenge?" Lu Ming could not help but clench his fists. "Lu Ming, don't think too much about it. This is the rule of the mystical sword sect. If you want to challenge a disciple on the bronze list, you must be on the bronze list as well. Only then will you be qualified. Otherwise, you don't have the right to challenge them." Seeing this, Mu Lan started explaining to Lu Ming. "I see." Lu Ming muttered. However, Yarou Tianyu's condescending and disdainful look just now could not be removed from Lu Ming's mind. "The bronze ranking? I'll get there soon. Yarou Tianyu, just you wait." Lu Ming clenched his fists tightly, his eyes filled with determination. "Lu Ming, are you all right? Lu Ming, how are you?" Only then did Feng Wu and Hua Kai arrive, panting. Chapter 84. Chapter 84, Healing. 54969039. "I'm fine." Lu Ming smiled. However, the two of them still looked at Lu Ming in shock. This was because Lu Ming was completely drenched in blood. He looked like a man made of blood. Hua Kai, in particular, had a complicated look in his eyes besides shock. He was touched and admired. "By the way, how's Pang Shi?" Lu Ming asked with some worry. "He's fine. The alchemist has already set his bones back and fed him some healing pills. He should be fine," Hua Kai said. "That's good." Lu Ming smiled faintly. Suddenly, his body swayed and his face turned pale. "Lu Ming, what's wrong?" Mu Lan, Feng Wu, and Hua Kai were all shocked. "It seems that I have to recuperate on the spot," Lu Ming smiled bitterly. Lu Ming immediately sat cross-legged and circulated the True War Dragon technique to begin healing. "Detestable," Hua Kai growled. Lu Ming could not even go back to recuperate, which showed the severity of his injuries. After that, Hua Kai, Feng Wu, and Mu Lan all stood close to Lu Ming to protect him. The surrounding onlookers watched for a while before leaving. The news of this battle spread like wildfire throughout the entire mystical sword sect. After hearing this news, everyone had different reactions. Some people scoffed and thought that Lu Ming was a reckless man who did things impulsively and did not care about the consequences. It was unwise to fight even though he knew that he was no match. However, some people were full of praise for Lu Ming. They felt that Lu Ming was loyal, had a firm path of martial arts, and had an indomitable will to advance bravely. On the path of martial arts, one should be fearless and attack when needed. If one had to look around, even be afraid of the slightest thing, and swallow one's anger, then what was the point of practicing martial arts and cultivation? Anyway, there were all kinds of theories. Of course, Lu Ming was unaware of this. He was fully focused on healing his injuries. The healing process took 6 hours. When Lu Ming opened his eyes, it was already evening. Lu Ming, are you feeling better? Mu Lan was the first to notice that Lu Ming had woken up. She asked hurriedly. Much better. Lu Ming smiled. After 12 hours of healing, his injuries had basically stabilized. As long as he could hold on for a while, he would be completely healed. Feng Wu and Hua Kai hurried to Lu Ming's side. Lu Ming's heart was filled with warmth. He knew that while he was recuperating, the few of them had been by his side. However, there was a skinny youth who didn't leave either. He was watching from a distance. Let's go back, Lu Ming said. Then, he walked to the skinny youth and asked, what's your name? Lu. Senior brother Lu, I'm Li Yi. The skinny youth said excitedly. Li Yi. Thank you for this. Lu Ming smiled. No, senior brother Lu Ming, I should be the one thanking you. Li Yi said hurriedly. Let's go back to the Vermilion Bird Hall together. Lu Ming smiled faintly. The few of them headed toward the Vermilion Bird Hall. Not long after, Lu Ming and the rest had returned to the dormitory. After Lu Ming returned, he did not return to his room. Instead, he walked into Pang She's room. Pang She was lying on the bed, his entire body wrapped in bandages. His legs and arms were also in casts. At this moment, Pang She had already woken up. When he saw Lu Ming entering, he struggled to get up and shouted, Senior brother Lu Ming, are you all right? Don't move, just lie down and rest. Lu Ming hurriedly stopped Pang She from moving and smiled. Don't worry, I'm fine. Senior brother Lu Ming, I'm sorry. It's all my fault that you're so badly injured. Pang She said with tears in his eyes. He had heard about Lu Ming's battle. After all, it had been more than 6 hours. I should be the one saying sorry. Yaro Tianyu and the others' target is me, but they implicated you. Lu Ming said. No, it's not Senior Lu Ming's fault. It's all my fault for being too weak. Otherwise, I wouldn't have implicated you, Senior Lu Ming. Pang She said. His eyes were filled with self-blame and determination. All right, Big Rock, don't think too much. Have a good rest. Lu Ming smiled and patted Pang She. He then walked out of Pang She's room. After returning to his room, Lu Ming entered the Supreme Shrine. The armor of the red-scaled snake is so broken. He took off all his clothes and looked at the tattered red-scaled snake armor in his hands. Lu Ming smiled bitterly. This time, if he didn't have the red-scaled snake armor as a layer of protection, he would have been more seriously injured. After changing into a new set of clothes, Lu Ming went out to fetch some water to wash his body clean. He then returned to the Supreme Shrine and continued to channel his energy to heal his injuries. Time flew by, and 7 days quickly passed. 7 days later, Lu Ming practiced a set of fist techniques in the courtyard and exercised his muscles and bones. After 7 days, my injuries have healed. Lu Ming sensed it and thought to himself. His eyes flashed with joy. He realized that the true qi cultivated from the true war dragon technique was not only rich and condensed, but it also had a very good healing effect. An ordinary person would need at least a month to recover from such an injury. However, he only used 7 days. A god-grade cultivation technique was indeed very useful. Squeak. Just then, the door was pushed open and Feng Wu walked in. Lu Ming, how's your recovery? I've brought you some medicinal wine. Do you want to try it? Feng Wu smiled brightly. I've already recovered. Lu Ming said with a smile. Ah! The smile froze on Feng Wu's face. She looked at Lu Ming as if he was a monster. It's only been 7 days, and you've already recovered. Yeah, what's so strange about that? Don't you know that I'm a genius? Lu Ming waved his hand, and it cut through the air with a loud whistling sound. He then looked at Feng Wu with a smug face. Genius. How can a genius be beaten up like this? Feng Wu pursed her lips in disdain, but there was still shock in her eyes. He recovered in 7 days. What a monster. By the way, Feng Wu, can you tell me more about the bronze list? How strong are the geniuses on the bronze list? Lu Ming asked. The bronze ranking? He's very strong. Feng Wu's face turned grim at the mention of the bronze list. As you know, you have to win 10 matches in a row on the bronze platform before you can be ranked on the bronze list. It's not easy to win 10 matches in a row. The higher you go, the more difficult it will be. For example, after you win 8 matches in a row, you will have to face an opponent who has also won 8 matches in a row in the 9th match. After winning 9 matches in a row, you will have to face an opponent who has also won 9 matches in a row. Therefore, it is really difficult to win 10 matches in a row. That's why the geniuses on the bronze list are all extremely powerful. They can defeat warriors of the same level with one move as easily as eating and drinking. I heard that most of the geniuses on the bronze list have successfully cultivated at least one black-level low-rank martial technique. Even if they didn't successfully cultivate a black-level martial arts technique, they would have mastered some secret technique, and some might even have cultivated the path of body refinement. Feng Wu explained in detail. Chapter 85. Chapter 85. Practicing the spear with the waterfall. 54969039. How many people are on the bronze list? Lu Ming asked. 56 people, excluding the Chilean Hall. There are a total of 56 geniuses from the 4 halls who have made it onto the bronze list. Feng Wu said. Only 56 people? Lu Ming muttered. The mystical sword sect would recruit a batch of disciples every year, and as long as they were not over 30 years old, they would be considered as disciples. After so many years, the mystical sword sect had more than 50,000 bronze disciples. There were more than 50,000 people, but only 56 of them were geniuses on the bronze list. One had to know that those who could join the mystical sword sect had to go through a series of examinations. It was a sign of talent, and 1 in 100 was chosen. It was obvious how talented the geniuses on the bronze list were. What's Yaro Tianyu's ranking? Lu Ming asked again. 51st. Feng Wu's eyes flickered as she scrutinized Lu Ming. You're not really thinking of challenging Yaro Tianyu, are you? He joined the mystical sword sect 2 years ago, and I heard that he was a strong contender for the newcomer king during the newcomer's trial. Although he failed, his talent cannot be underestimated. Although he's ranked 51st, his abilities have improved very quickly. I believe that he'll continue to rise. Lu Ming, it won't be a problem for you to defeat him in another year. But it's still too early this year. Feng Wu, since you don't trust me that much, how about we make a bet? I'll bet on whether I can defeat Yaro Tianyu in 4 months. Lu Ming smiled faintly. Oh, what are we betting on? Feng Wu said. What are we betting on? Let me think. Lu Ming touched his chin. Then, his eyes wandered all over Feng Wu's body. From time to time, he would even let out a sigh. Feng Wu's pretty face turned red. She glared at Lu Ming and shouted, Lu Ming, you're shameless, don't even think about it. Feng Wu, why are you scolding me? I just wanted to bet on a big meal to see if you have that much money. You see, my thoughts are not pure, right? Lu Ming looked surprised. You. Feng Wu's face turned even redder, all the way to her ears. She glared at Lu Ming and said fiercely, Fine, I'll take the bet. If I don't rip you off, my name isn't Feng Wu. Having said that, he threw a jar of medicinal wine at Lu Ming and left in a huff. Ha ha ha. Lu Ming laughed heartily. It was quite interesting to tease the beauty Feng Wu occasionally. He opened the wine jar and gulped down a few mouthfuls. Lu Ming began to consider his future cultivation path. It's too slow to cultivate the basic gun technique like this. If this continues, I don't know when I'll be able to cultivate the fire-controlling gun technique. I need to use external forces to speed up the cultivation of the basic gun technique. If one wanted to be on the bronze list, He had to master a profound-level martial arts technique. There it is. Lu Ming was deep in thought when his eyes suddenly lit up. Immediately, he gulped down the entire jar of medicinal wine. It's really good wine, but it's a pity that it has a medicinal smell and lacks a lot of flavor. Lu Ming clicked his tongue and walked out. The first place he went to was the contribution hall. He exchanged the 2 million taels of Silivera for contribution points, so he had a total of 20,000 contribution points. He only had a few 100,000 Silivera on him. In addition to his previous contribution points, he had a total of 25,500 contribution points. Then, he started to exchange for the demonic beast blood essence. He was going to exchange for the blood essence of a Class 8 Lever 2 demonic beast. A portion of 8th grade 2nd level demonic beast blood essence was worth 800 contribution points. Lu Ming exchanged for 20 sets, which cost him 16,000 contribution points. It was too expensive. Lu Ming's heart twitched a few times. He had wanted to exchange for some Class 9 Lever 2 demonic beast blood essence, but it cost 1,600 contribution points per portion. Lu Ming smiled bitterly. He could only put it aside for the time being. After exchanging for the demonic beast blood essence, Lu Ming left the mystical sword sect and headed east. The layout of the mystical sword sect was rather peculiar. The 4 halls occupied the 4 most majestic mountains in the north, south, east, and west. The central region was an even wider region. In this area, there was not only Qilin Hall, but also the Hall of Mission, the Hall of Contribution, the Bronze Platform, and other important places in the mystical sword sect. Further north of the Onyx Tortoise Hall was the core area of the mystical sword sect. The sect leader, golden-robed elders, golden-ranked disciples, and a portion of Silivera-robed elders were all cultivating in this area. It was the core of the mystical sword sect's power. The east side of the Azure Dragon Hall was connected to a vast mountain range. This mountain range was known as the Coastal Mountain Range. It was vast and boundless, and countless demonic beasts lived in it. It was said that beyond the mountain range by the sea was the Endless Sea. It could be said that the Blazing Sun Empire was at the easternmost part of the entire Divine Wilderness continent. Lu Ming wanted to go to the mountain range by the sea. He wanted to look for an advantageous position to cultivate his spear technique. It was impossible for Lu Ming to go deep into the mountain range along the coast. He was only at the periphery. 2 days later, Lu Ming was about 200 miles deep. Boom, boom, boom. A waterfall rumbled. The water fell from a height of more than 1,000 meters, forming a huge impact that shook everything within a few hundred meters. This is the place. I'll use this waterfall to cultivate. Lu Ming's eyes lit up. Then, Lu Ming took out his fire-patterned gun and walked slowly toward the waterfall from the side. The Silivera water column fell from a height of over 1,000 meters, and its momentum was extremely shocking. The closer they got, the more they could feel the majestic power. To practice the spear, the first step is to practice spear wielding. Only when you hold the spear steadily will you be able to grasp the other basic spear techniques. Then, Lu Ming grabbed the end of the spear with one hand, stretched his hand straight, and extended the body of the spear into the waterfall. The moment the body of the spear was washed by the water from the waterfall, Lu Ming felt an extremely strong pressure pressing on the body of the spear. He bent his wrist and threw the long spear down. With a burst of true qi, he pulled the spear back with great force. What a strong force! It's not stable at all. However, this is also a good place to cultivate. Continue. Lu Ming's eyes were bright and determined. He continued to extend the spear, and true energy continued to flow into the spear. This time, he managed to hold on for 2 more breaths before the spear was thrown down by the waterfall. Continue. Continue. Lu Ming was not discouraged. He started to cultivate again and again. Lu Ming realized that cultivating the way he held the spear consumed a terrifying amount of essential qi. Every once in a while, Lu Ming would have to stand aside and circulate the true war dragon technique to recover his essential qi. Of course, there were also benefits to this. Every time his genuine qi was squeezed dry, he would cultivate and replenish it. This would make his genuine qi more condensed and his foundation more stable. During this period, Lu Ming would occasionally devour and refine a portion of demonic beast blood essence. His cultivation level was rapidly improving. 7 days later, Lu Ming could already hold the spear for more than 10 minutes in the waterfall. However, it was very unstable and the long spear swayed back and forth in the water. However, this was already a huge improvement. For another 7 days, the long spear in the waterfall was stable. No matter how the water of the waterfall hit it, the long spear did not move at all. Chapter 86. Chapter 86, Southern Ridge Fire Field. 54969039. At this stage, Lu Ming cultivated the basic spear technique and made rapid progress. His thrust was as steady as a mountain, and he could even stab a fly in the air. On the third 7 days, Lu Ming even tied a stone weighing 100 catties to the tip of the spear. Carrying the 100-pound stone, Lu Ming practiced spear-wielding in the waterfall. Just like that, a month passed. After a month of hard work, Lu Ming had finally cultivated the basic spear technique to an extremely profound level. He held the spear in his hand and stood still like a mountain. After a month of excruciating cultivation and refining all 20 portions of demonic beast blood essence, Lu Ming's cultivation level had improved at an amazing speed. He had already reached the peak of the 7th grade master realm, and he wasn't far from the 8th grade master realm. As the 20 portions of blood essence were devoured and refined in a month, Lu Ming's cultivation level was very stable. Now, I can start to practice the fire gun art. Lu Ming entered the Supreme Shrine, took out the fire gun controlling art and began to read it carefully. The fire gun skill was a fire attribute gun skill and was divided into 6 moves. Fire dance of the fire gun art, broken armor, moon pull, lightning chase, landslide, explosion. Of the 6 moves, other than the move of explosion, the other 5 moves did not have any difference in strength. The only difference was in the way the spear was used. The only difference was in the degree of maturity and comprehension. After observing it carefully, Lu Ming began to cultivate. At the end of the stairs, there was a faintly discernible palace. The sound of chanting continuously rang out, clearing Lu Ming's mind. He quickly comprehended the martial arts technique. Whoosh, and NBSB, buzz. The sound of the spear piercing through the air, as well as the vibration of the spear itself, resounded throughout the Supreme Shrine. He cultivated like this for half a month. In the forest, Lu Ming's figure moved unhindered. The fire-patterned spear danced in his hands, like a fire dragon rolling. Woo-woo-oo-woo-oo. Lu Ming suddenly thrust his spear. Fire gun art broken armor. The long spear pierced through the air with unparalleled speed, like a bolt of lightning, stabbing towards a 2-meter-tall boulder. At the tip of the spear, a spinning cutting force was produced. Bang! The huge rock was pierced through by the fire-patterned spear like it was tofu. Fire gun art mountain crash. And NBSB. Suddenly, the fire-patterned spear shook, and the body of the spear flickered, creating a vibrating force. Boom! The huge rock exploded right in the middle, sending debris flying. I've finally reached the first level of the fire gun art. I've just gotten a glimpse of it. Lu Ming's face was filled with joy. As expected of a black-grade low-level martial arts technique, it was extremely powerful. Lu Ming felt that its power had already surpassed the lustrous sword technique even though he had only cultivated the first stage. After all, the lustrous sword technique had been stuck at the 5th level, and it was difficult to break through. The first level of the fire gun technique was equivalent to the 6th level of the lustrous sword technique. Generally speaking, it was very difficult to successfully cultivate a black-level martial skill without the cultivation of a great martial master. For example, the Zhu family's patriarch, Zhu Bing, had only managed to cultivate to the 1st level after decades of cultivation. Lu Ming, on the other hand, had cultivated to the 1st level in just half a month. This was inseparable from the effect of the chanting. Of course, without Lu Ming's hard work in cultivating the basic gun technique a month ago, it would be impossible for him to master the fire gun control technique so quickly. Then, he continued to cultivate. 7 days later, Lu Ming was sitting cross-legged on a green rock, frowning in deep thought. It's still lacking a little. It doesn't feel very smooth. After this period of cultivation, he realized that he was still a little bit short of comprehending the essence of the fire gun controlling art. If he cultivated in this way, even with the help of the chanting, the cultivation progress would not reach the level that Lu Ming was satisfied with. Maybe it's because of the environment. The fire gun art belongs to the fire attribute. I should go to a place full of fire attribute spiritual chi to cultivate, then I can be like a fish in water. That way, combined with the chanting sound, I can improve faster. Where's the fire attributed spiritual chi? Oh, right, the Southern Ridge fire field. Suddenly, Lu Ming's eyes lit up as he thought of a place. The Southern Ridge fire field was in the southwest of the mystical sword sect. It was an area where volcanoes erupted. The volcanoes covered a radius of 1,000 miles, and it was filled with flames and fire-type spiritual chi. It was perfect for him to practice the fire gun controlling art there. The key was that that area not only had a large number of fire attribute demonic beasts, but it also produced a spiritual herb called flame crystal grass. Flame crystal grass was one of the precious materials required to cultivate the third stage of the true war dragon technique. This was a material that was more precious than the spirit condensing fruit and the blood mist rock. If he were to exchange for it at the mystical sword sect, Lu Ming estimated that it would cost at least 10 to 20,000 contribution points. Going to the Southridge fire field was killing two birds with one stone. Lu Ming immediately returned to the mystical sword sect to visit Pang Shi. After such a long time, Pang Shi had already recovered and was even more diligent in his cultivation. Seeing that Pang Shi was fine, Lu Ming was relieved. He then exchanged some detox pills and essential chi recovery pills with his contribution points and headed to the Southridge fire field. On the way, Lu Ming caught a 4th grade 2nd level gale lion. The speed of the wind travel lion was extremely fast, much faster than the green scale horse. 5 days later, Lu Ming arrived at the Lingnan fire field. They could already feel waves of hot air blowing against their faces before they even entered the Southern Ridge fire field. After releasing the wind-walking lion, Lu Ming walked into the Southridge fire field. There were no volcanoes in the periphery of the Lingnan fire field. The ground was pitch black, like burnt rocks. Hot air was rising from the ground. Whoosh! Sometimes, a gas would rush out of the ground. It was extremely hot, and ordinary people would be scalded if they touched it. Not long after Lu Ming entered, he would occasionally see some figures. These people had a name: Stone Hunters. There were many volcanoes in the center of the Southern Ridge fire field. When these volcanoes erupted, they would spew out a type of or called inferno stone. Inferno stone could be refined into inferno iron, and it was the best material for forging spirit weapons. However, those who would come here to pick up stones were usually itinerant cultivators with low cultivation, and there were even ordinary people. The Lingnan fire field was full of danger. The ground would spew out hot gases, lava, and flames from time to time. Even a martial arts master would be severely injured or even killed if he was hit by the flames. As for inferno ore, it was just an ore and wasn't expensive. Therefore, those with high cultivation rarely came here. Lu Ming did not stay long in the outer area. He wanted to go to the central region, where there were many fire-type demonic beasts and the fire-type spiritual chi was stronger. That was the place for cultivation. Very soon, Lu Ming passed through the outer area and arrived at the central area. In the central region, the air was even hotter, as if they were in a big steamer. The stones on the ground were all fiery red, and one could even hear a pop sound. Lu Ming looked around and could occasionally see lava gushing out of the ground. This area was even more dangerous, and almost no one came here. Lu Ming circulated his essential chi throughout his body to resist the heat from the outside world. At the same time, he was fully focused on observing the situation on the ground. This was to prevent them from being hit by the lava. Chapter 87. Chapter 87, Disciple of the 10 Directions Sword School. 54969039. He then walked in. After walking for about 10 miles, Lu Ming stopped. This was because a fierce tiger with red flames all over its body had appeared in front of him. The Scarlet Flame Demonic Tiger was a Class 8 second-level demonic beast. It was a fire element demonic beast and usually lived in places with rich fire element spiritual chi. Roar. The Scarlet Flame Demonic Tiger suddenly roared and opened its mouth. A pillar of fire spewed out of its mouth and blasted toward Lu Ming. Good. Lu Ming's eyes gleamed and he took out his fire-patterned gun. Fire gun art broken armor. With a thrust of the spear, the spinning cutting force burst out and destroyed the pillar of fire spat out by the Scarlet Flame Demonic Tiger. Then, Lu Ming charged at the Scarlet Flame Demonic Tiger and smashed his spear at it. Fire gun art mountain crash. The long spear pressed down, emitting a violent whistling sound. The Scarlet Flame Demonic Tiger seemed to sense danger. The fiery red fur on its body stood on end, and on its fur, there were scorching flames. These flames condensed into a huge fireball in the air and shot towards the fire-patterned spear, trying to block the attack. However, it was all in vain. The fire-patterned spear was unstoppable. With a slight shake, the fireball collapsed, and the fire-patterned spear continued to smash down. Bang! The spear hit the Scarlet Flame Demonic Tiger's head, making a cracking sound. The Scarlet Flame Demonic Tiger's forehead caved in. The Scarlet Flame Demonic Tiger's huge body rolled back dozens of meters before it stopped. It was no longer breathing. Lu Ming walked over and controlled his blood meridian to suck out the Scarlet Flame Demonic Tiger's blood essence. Lu Ming would not miss the chance to obtain the blood essence of an 8th grade second-level demonic beast. In the mystical sword sect, it cost 800 contribution points. Circulating his spirit-devouring bloodline, it did not take long for him to devour and refine the Scarlet Flame Demon Tiger's blood essence. Lu Ming's cultivation had improved once again, but he was still a little lacking to break through to the 8th grade master realm. This place is rich in flame chi. I'll cultivate the fire lance technique here. Immediately, Lu Ming's mind sank into the fire gun control art and he began to cultivate. Kai Kai O and NBSB, buzz. Shadows of the spear were everywhere, and the energy was surging. Lu Ming felt that his cultivation was extremely smooth. There was no obstruction when he circulated the spear technique. It was as if he was one with the surrounding environment. As expected, the environment had a great influence on the cultivation of battle techniques. Smooth, it's too smooth. Lu Ming's eyes lit up and he was immersed in this feeling. Lu Ming only stopped after 6 hours of cultivation. And NBSB, hoo. Lu Ming panted heavily. Cultivating here required him to circulate his essential qi to protect his body at all times. He also had to observe his surroundings to see if there was any magma or flames rushing out. It was very taxing on his essential qi and mind. However, Lu Ming's eyes were filled with excitement. He had only cultivated for 6 hours and Lu Ming could feel that he had made great progress in the fire gun art. Lu Ming immediately retreated to the outer area to recover his essential qi. After his essential qi had recovered, Lu Ming entered the Supreme Shrine again. With the help of the chanting, he continued to comprehend the feeling of cultivating in the central region. Sure enough, with the chanting, the feeling of cultivation just now became clearer, and his understanding of the fire gun art was one step closer. A few hours later, Lu Ming entered the central region again to cultivate the firearms control art. Just like that, Lu Ming cultivated in the central area. When his essential qi was exhausted, he returned to the outer area to recover. Then, he combined it with the chanting of sutras to comprehend the fire gun art. Lu Ming's comprehension of the fire gun control art was rapidly improving. In just half a month, Lu Ming's fire gun controlling art had a breakthrough and entered the 2nd level, which was a small success. In addition, Lu Ming had killed no less than 10 fire attribute demonic beasts in the past half a month. 5 of them were at the 8th grade of 2nd level, and 1 was even at the 9th grade of 2nd level. The others were all below 8th grade 2nd level. After devouring and refining the demonic beast's blood essence, coupled with half a month's hard work, Lu Ming's cultivation finally broke through again, reaching the 8th grade master realm. Such a cultivation base was already considered extremely high among the bronze disciples of the mystical sword sect. And NBSB, who. Once again, Lu Ming exhausted his essential qi and retreated to the outer area. He meditated in a secluded pile of rocks to recover. When Lu Ming's essential qi had recovered by about half, he suddenly heard a commotion not far away. "No, why did you catch me? I'm just an ordinary person without any cultivation. I can't help you. I'm only at 3rd grade warrior realm, so I can't help you. Please let me go." Sounds of begging for mercy could be heard. "Shut up, what's with all the noise? If I say you can help, then you can help. It's your 8 lifetimes of good fortune to be able to help the disciples of my 10 Directions Sword School." A cold shout rang out. From the voice, it was a young man. "Young heroes of the 10 Directions Sword School, if I can help you, I will definitely help. But you want us to enter the central region, and even get close to the inner region. It's very dangerous there. With my cultivation, if I'm not careful, I will be burned to death. Please, young heroes, spare me." Some people begged for mercy. "Pa." Immediately, the sound of a slap rang out. The young voice continued, "What are you talking about? What did I call you for? What are you doing? If you continue to talk nonsense, I'll cut you into pieces." The other side of the phone calmed down. Suddenly, the sound of something breaking through the air rang out, and a figure appeared on the pile of rubble. It was a young man who was about 17 or 18 years old. He saw Lu Ming at a glance. "Haha, senior brother, there's one more person here." The young man laughed and looked at Lu Ming. "You really know how to hide, but do you think that hiding here is useful? Hurry up and come out and help us scout the way to the central region." Lu Ming frowned. He stopped the essential qi that he had recovered halfway and stood up. "Kid, hurry up and come out. Don't dawdle, I don't have time to waste with you." As the young man spoke, he swiped his claw at Lu Ming's throat. It was obvious that he wanted to grab Lu Ming and throw him out like a chicken. However, he was disappointed. Not only was he disappointed, but he was also shocked. This was because Lu Ming had also extended a hand and clawed at him. He was faster and more accurate than him as he grabbed his wrist. The strong force penetrated the bones of the young man's wrist, and the heart-piercing pain made the young man scream. "Ah, little bastard, you dare to hurt me? You're courting death." The young man's other hand was about to slap Lu Ming. "Get lost." Lu Ming shouted coldly and his essential qi burst out. He swung the arm that was holding the young man's wrist. The young man's arm made a catcha-catcha sound and the bones in one of his arms broke into several pieces. He let out a blood-curdling scream and flew more than 10 meters away, falling heavily on the ground. Ah, you little bastard, you're dead. You dare to hit me? Do you know who I am?" The young man struggled to get up, hugging his arms and crying out in a heart-wrenching voice. "Aren't you just a disciple of the 10 Directions Sword School? Is it that amazing?" Lu Ming pursed his lips. Chapter 88. Chapter 88. Chapter 88 Spear Technique shows its might. 549690339. Since you know that I'm a disciple of the 10 Directions Sword School, why don't you kneel down and apologize? The young man shouted. What an idiot. Lu Ming was somewhat speechless. Could it be that everyone in the omnidirectional sword sect was like this? Since Lu Ming knew that he was a disciple of the omnidirectional sword sect and still dared to attack him, it was obvious that he was not afraid of the omnidirectional sword sect. He even asked Lu Ming to kneel down and apologize. If he was not an idiot, what was he? With a sway of his body, Lu Ming left the pile of rubble. At this moment, a few figures rushed over. They were all young people. Further away, there were 5 young men who surrounded more than a dozen secret practitioners and ordinary people who were picking up firestones. Junior brother Zhao, what's going on? One of the men who was running over asked. Senior brother, this little bastard, he actually dared to sneak attack me. If you move, you have to cripple him for me. The young man from before shouted. Brat, how dare you hurt a disciple of my 10 Directions Sword School? Now, I'll cripple your cultivation and then obediently help us scout the way inside. Perhaps we can still keep our lives." One of the chubby disciples from the 10 Directions Sword School said. He looked at Lu Ming coldly with an arrogant expression. Lu Ming touched his nose speechlessly. This was a disciple of the omnipresent sword sect. Why did they all have the same behavior and look like they were superior? The 10 Directions Sword School was indeed the #1 sect in the Burning Sun Empire, but there was no need for everyone to put on such a high and mighty expression, right? "Kid, I'm talking to you. Are you deaf?" The chubby young man shouted coldly. "You asked me to scout the way in and even captured so many ordinary people. What do you want?" Lu Ming did not answer. Instead, he asked curiously. "Nonsense, is this something you can ask?" "Obediently go and scout the way," the chubby young man said coldly, then he threw a punch at Lu Ming's dantian. The chubby young man had the cultivation of a 7th grade master realm. His punch was extremely powerful. If it landed, it would definitely destroy Lu Ming's cyclone and cripple his cultivation. This was the Shifang sword sect, extremely domineering. If they didn't agree, they would destroy your cultivation. The 10 Directions Sword School, hey. We'll have to fight them sooner or later, so I'll collect some interest first. Lu Ming's gaze turned cold. Lu Yuntian might have fallen into the hands of the 10 Directions Sword sect. Lu Ming did not have a good impression of the 10 Directions Sword sect. Now, it was even worse. Boom. Lu Ming's flame dragon fist blasted out, and his fist force was faster and more ruthless. A punch accurately hit the fat young man's stomach. The fat young man's eyes instantly bulged out. Immediately, he let out a shrill scream. His fat body flew out like a ball, flying nearly 20 meters away before falling to the ground. He rolled a few times before stopping. You destroyed my cultivation. You actually destroyed my cultivation, bastard, bastard. The chubby young man let out a shrill scream. You're the only one allowed to cripple my cultivation, but I'm not allowed to cripple yours. Lu Ming said indifferently. Brat, you're looking for death. The remaining 2 young men roared and unsheathed their long swords. 2 sharp sword lights burst out and attacked Lu Ming. The 2 of them were both 7th grade master realm. Fire gun art moon pulling. With a move of his hand, the fire vein spear appeared. He swept the spear across. In the sky, a fiery red light flashed like a moon. Bang! Bang! The 2 young men from the 10 Directions Sword sect were unable to resist at all. They were sent flying by the long spear, and they vomited blood in the air. When they fell, they were no longer breathing. Lu Ming's shot had already broken their bones and their internal organs were shattered. The chubby young man and the young man from before were stunned. Their faces turned pale and their bodies trembled. Lu Ming's gaze shifted to the young man with the broken hand. Don't kill me," the young man with the broken hand shouted in fear. However, Lu Ming was unmoved. He raised his long spear. Stop. At this moment, the 5 disciples of the 10 Directions Sword School who had surrounded the stone pickers all rushed over. One of them let out a loud roar and revealed his powerful cultivation at the peak of the 8th grade master realm. Ah! The young man with the broken hand cried out in fear and ran for his life toward the 5 disciples of the 10 Directions Sword School. However, whoosh! Lu Ming swung the long spear in his hand and it shot out like lightning. It caught up with the young man with the broken hand in an instant and pierced through his chest from the back, nailing him to the ground. Die! Die! Little bastard, not only will you die, but your family and friends will also die. The peak 8th grade Master Realm disciple let out an angry roar and rushed toward Lu Ming. Let's see who dies first. Using the dragon serpent steps, Lu Ming turned into a gust of wind and rushed towards the 5 men from the omnidirectional sword sect. When he passed by the one-armed young man, he pulled out his fire-patterned spear. Both parties were rapidly approaching. Wild wave slash! The 8th grade Master Realm disciple roared. He held a huge sword that was as wide as a palm with both hands, and the sword light was like a storm, slashing toward Lu Ming. Buzz! The fire vein spear shook and swept forward. Clang! The spear and the sword clashed, sending sparks flying in all directions and creating a massive boom. The disciple from the omnipresent sword sect trembled and took a dozen steps back, while Lu Ming's body trembled and swayed slightly. Kill. The next moment, the other 4 disciples of the omnidirectional sword sect slashed their swords at Lu Ming. Out of the 5 major sects of the Blazing Sun Empire, only the 10 Direction Sword School and the Mystical Sword School specialized in sword techniques, and the sword techniques they specialized in were slightly different. The sword techniques cultivated by the 10 Directions Sword School leaned towards being firm and fierce. They were bold and powerful. The 4 disciples from the Omnipresent Sword School, 2 8th grade and 2 7th grade Master Realm, joined forces. Their sword chi was like a raging wave, sweeping toward Lu Ming. As he attacked, he also used Bloodline Explosion, which was much more powerful. However, they were facing Lu Ming, who had already cultivated the black-level low-level martial arts technique to the 2nd level. LNU. Lu Ming's eyes were bright. The essential chi in his entire body burst out and he swept his spear. Boom. 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 There were 4 consecutive explosions, and at the same time, 4 screams. The 2 7th grade Master Realm disciples were instantly killed and sent flying far away. The 2 8th grade Master Realm young men weren't any better off. They were sent flying for more than 10 meters before crashing heavily onto the ground. They coughed up large mouthfuls of blood and were also severely injured. 1 spear strike had killed 2 and injured 2, shocking the peak 8th grade Master Realm disciple. However, Lu Ming would not give him any chance to catch his breath. He rushed forward a few steps and then jumped high up, smashing the fire-patterned gun down. Landslide. The long spear smashed down with a shrill whistling sound. The disciple from the 10 Directions Sword School turned pale. He exploded with all his strength and circulated the power of his bloodline to the extreme. His combat sword slashed upwards. Clang. The spear hit the combat sword, and the force whistled out, forming a gust of wind that swept in all directions. Boom. The stone under the disciple's feet exploded. He couldn't stand still and knelt down. The stone on his knee exploded. Chapter 89. Chapter 89. Chapter 89 Extinct Volcano. 54969039. He coughed out large mouthfuls of blood and fell to the ground like a pool of mud. The spear had shattered both his arms, and the powerful impact had also shattered his internal organs. He was dead for sure. The power of the black-grade low-level martial arts technique was finally on display. Lu Ming had only cultivated it to the 2nd level, but its power was double that of the yellow-grade high-level martial arts technique's 6th level. What? How could he be so strong? You. Who are they? The disciple from the 10 Directions Sword School asked unwillingly as he coughed up blood. His eyes were filled with disbelief. With his cultivation at the peak of the 8th grade Master Realm, he was actually defeated in one move. The cultivation that Lu Ming revealed was clearly only at the 8th grade Master Realm. Lu Ming of the Mystical Sword Sect. Lu Ming said indifferently. The Mystical Sword Sect. The young man murmured. His eyes then became unfocused and his vitality completely disappeared. At the same time, the other 2 8th grade Master Realm experts had also died. Their internal organs were also crushed by Lu Ming. Although the spear technique was not as varied as the sword technique, it was more violent, more direct, and more overbearing. The chubby young man was the only one left. At this moment, the chubby young man's face was deathly pale. His body was constantly trembling, and cold sweat was flowing down his face. Lu Ming walked towards the fat young man step by step. Don't kill me," the chubby young man shouted in shock. "Tell me, what does the 10 Direction Sword Sect want by capturing so many ordinary stone hunters?" Lu Ming asked coldly. "I can say it, but you have to promise not to kill me." The chubby young man rolled his eyes and shouted. "Oh, you don't want to say it? Then you can go to hell." Lu Ming's eyes turned cold and he raised the long spear in his hand. The chubby young man was so scared that his soul almost scattered. He shouted, I'll talk, I'll talk, I'll talk." Lu Ming looked at him coldly, waiting for him to continue. We came with senior brother Zheng. He said he would bring us here to search for treasures, so we came. Senior brother Zheng said that he had read about an extinct volcano near the inner area of the Southridge fire field in the ancient books recorded by his ancestors. There are treasures inside. The chubby young man hurriedly explained. Then why did you catch so many ordinary stone hunters? Lu Ming asked. Because the area around the extinct volcano is very unstable. Lava and flames will burst out from time to time. The ground will even sink in. We need someone to find a safe way to enter the extinct volcano. The chubby young man was scared to death and spoke in full detail. Lu Ming frowned. It was obvious that they wanted to use the stone hunters' lives to find a way for them. This was what martial arts powerhouses were like. In their eyes, the lives of ordinary people were like ants. Lu Ming would never show mercy to his enemies. However, he could not disregard the lives of others for his own selfish reasons. What treasures are there in that extinct volcano? Lu Ming pondered for a moment and asked. I don't know about that. Senior brother Zheng didn't tell us. I've told you everything I know. Can you let me go now? The chubby young man begged, but he was thinking about how to ask senior brother Zheng to kill Lu Ming after he escaped. Wait a minute, I have another question. What's your senior brother Zheng's cultivation? Is there anyone who is stronger than him? Lu Ming asked again. The chubby young man answered honestly, Senior brother Zheng is a famous genius of our 10 Directions sword school. He has already won 8 consecutive victories on the bronze platform. He's not much weaker than the geniuses on the bronze ranking. Among the senior and junior brothers who came this time, senior brother Zheng is the strongest. 8 consecutive wins on the bronze list. Lu Ming muttered. The division of ranks among the disciples of the 5 major sects of the Blazing Sun Empire was similar. They were all divided into 3 ranks: bronze, silivera, and gold. Similarly, there were bronze and silivera lists in every sect. The rules were exactly the same. All right, I've said what you wanted me to say. Can you let me go now? The chubby young man said. Let you go? When did I say I would let you go? Lu Ming said coldly. Then, he thrust the long spear and pierced the fat young man's heart. 8 consecutive wins on the bronze platform? I wonder how powerful the 8 consecutive wins on the bronze platform of the 10 Directions sword sect are. Lu Ming's eyes were filled with a strong desire to fight. Back then, he had vomited blood from He Tai's punch. He Tai had won 8 consecutive victories on the bronze platform of the mystical sword sect. They both had 8 consecutive wins on the bronze platform, but they belonged to 2 different sects. Their abilities might not be the same, but the difference would not be too great. Lu Ming's combat strength had improved greatly during this period of time. It was a good time to test the results. Following that, Lu Ming devoured all the blood essence of the omnidirectional sword sect disciples and found a place to refine them. As for the stone hunters, they had already fled like a swarm of bees when the Shifang sword sect disciples were killed. 2 hours later, Lu Ming's essential qi had fully recovered and he had reached his peak. Then, Lu Ming ran in the direction of the extinct volcano that the chubby young man had mentioned. In the southern ridge fire field, in the depths of the central area, near the inner area, there was a tall, dead volcano. It was unknown when this volcano had stopped erupting, but the temperature around it was still astonishingly high. The ground was red. A few thousand meters away from the extinct volcano, there were more than 20 young men. Needless to say, they were all disciples of the 10 Directions sword school. More than 20 disciples of the 10 Directions sword school surrounded more than 30 stone hunters. More than 30 stone hunters gathered together, their faces terrified and trembling. Young heroes of the 10 Directions sword school, I beg you. It's really dangerous there. If you let us explore the way, we'll be sending our sleevers to our deaths. I have old and young people to take care of. I beg you, please let me go back. A burly man in his 50s kept bowing and begging. Whoosh! With a flash of sword light, the burly man's head flew high into the air. So noisy. You want to leave? I'll send you on your way now. A disciple from the 10 Directions sword school sheathed his sword and said coldly. The other stone hunters suddenly kept quiet out of fear and did not dare to speak again. However, the look of despair on their faces became even more intense. You, hurry up and scout the way. If you're lucky enough to walk past, you can still keep your dog life. A disciple from the 10 Directions sword sect pointed at a dark-skinned man. The burly man's eyes were filled with despair, and his body trembled. If you don't want to go, then die now. The disciple from the 10 Directions sword school said coldly. I'll go. The burly man said in a trembling voice. Then, he walked out while trembling. If they went out to explore, they might still have a way out. If they didn't go, they would die. This burly man must have cultivated martial arts, but he had not awakened his bloodline. He was only at the first-grade warrior realm. He walked forward carefully, and soon, he had walked more than 200 meters. Suddenly, a stream of lava rushed out from the ground and directly submerged the burly man. Arg! The burly man screamed and turned into a ball of fire. In a few breaths, he was turned into a pile of charcoal. The temperature of the lava was terrifyingly high. Chapter 90. Chapter 90. The weak are like ants. 549690339. A living person was instantly turned into charcoal. This scene was truly terrifying. When the other stone hunters saw this, they were so scared that they couldn't stop trembling. However, the disciples of the 10 Directions sword school were very calm, even cold. Mark the places you just passed. Among the 10 Directions sword sect disciples, a dark-skinned young man with a cold expression ordered. This cold-looking young man was the Shifang sword sect's senior brother Zheng Ku. He didn't even look at the stone hunters. In his eyes, these stone hunters were just ants, tools to be used. His eyes were fixed on the extinct volcano in front of him. According to the records left by our ancestors, this is the place. I must get the fire spirit milk. As long as I get the fire spirit milk, my physical body will definitely be able to cultivate to the 2nd grade. In that case, my strength will increase greatly, and I will definitely be able to win 10 consecutive battles on the bronze platform and enter the bronze list. It's not just breaking through to the 2nd grade, it's even going to reach a higher level. 300 years ago, our ancestor got the fire spirit milk here. Now that 300 years have passed, there must be a lot of fire spirit milk. If there is enough, it's not entirely impossible to break through to the 3rd grade. Haha, in that case, how much can my combat strength improve? Zheng Qian thought fanatically. Yes, senior brother Zheng, yes. The Shifang sword sect disciple replied. Then, he threw out balls of white powder and scattered them on the spot where the burly man had just passed, forming a safe path. Now, you, go and scout the path. The disciple from the 10 Directions sword school pointed at a young man in his 20s. The young man's face instantly turned pale. His face was filled with despair and cold sweat. He cried out, I beg you, please let me go. I beg you. Ahai, young heroes, I beg you to let Ahai go. Let me take his place. He's still young. A white-haired old man walked out and knelt on the ground, kowtowing non-stop. Grandpa, don't. You can't go. The young man shouted. Let me do it, let me do it. I beg you to let Ahai go. He's still young. The old man didn't seem to hear the young man's words and continued to kowtow. Oh, what a loving grandfather-grandson pair. All right, this young master will be lenient. Old man, you go scout the way. A flat-nosed disciple from the 10 Directions sword sect waved his hand and said, Grandpa, don't go. The young man's tears flowed down as he shouted. Ahai, I'm already old. It doesn't matter anymore, but you must live on. The old man warned the young man, and then walked forward without looking back. The young man looked on in despair. The burly man from before had passed through the first 200 meters. It was very safe, and the old man had passed through smoothly. At this point, the old man carefully avoided the place where the lava had spurted out and continued forward. However, before he had even walked 100 meters, the ground suddenly split open when the old man stomped his foot. The old man fell straight down. Then, there was a shrill scream, and after a few breaths, there was no sound. "Grandpa!" The young man let out a desperate roar. The other stone hunters were even more flustered, their faces pale. "Make a mark." Zheng continued to order. Buzz. Buzz. Balls of white powder were thrown out, marking the safe routes and the dangerous places. It's your turn, go up." The flat-nosed disciple pointed at the young man from before. The young man's expression changed drastically. Just now, he cried out. "My grandfather has already taken my place. Why are you still asking me to go? Replace you? I never said that he was going in your place. He was the one who requested to go first, so of course I have to satisfy him. Now it's your turn." The flat-nosed disciple from the 10 Directions sword sect said coldly with a playful expression on his face. The other disciples of the 10 Directions sword sect looked on indifferently. No, you can't do this, I won't go. The young man kept shaking his head and shouting. The other stone hunters kept quiet out of fear. They did not dare to say a word for fear of being noticed by the disciples of the 10 Directions sword school. "You're not." The flat-nosed disciple's face turned cold, and he grinned hideously. "You don't want to go, right? If you don't want to go, I'll send you on your way now to accompany your dead grandpa." He waved his sword and a cold killing intent enveloped the young man's body. The young man's eyes were filled with fear. In the end, he still trembled and moved forward. After the young man walked a few dozen meters forward, he suddenly started to escape to the side. "You want to escape? You're looking for death." The flat-nosed disciple shouted and exhaled. He held his sword with both hands and slashed down at the young man who had escaped. Whoosh! A beam of sword chi shot out and instantly crossed dozens of meters, cutting the young man in half. "I've said it before. If you obediently go and explore the path, you might still have a chance to live. If you want to escape, the only path is death." The flat-nosed disciple of the 10 Directions sword sect sneered. He then pointed and said, "Go scout the path." Those who were pointed at walked out in despair, trembling as they moved forward, hoping that they were lucky enough to reach the end. But the result was still death. Just like that, one by one, they picked up the stones and went forward to explore the way. One by one, they died in the fire and lava. However, the safe route was slowly being discovered. The closer one got to the extinct volcano, the more dangerous it was, and the more unstable the underground was. More than a dozen of the 30 stone hunters had died in the blink of an eye. At this moment, they were still about 100 meters away from the extinct volcano. He called a few more people to investigate, and finally, a complete and safe path appeared. "Young heroes, can we go now?" One of the remaining stone hunters asked in a low voice. "Leave? Where to? The information here cannot be leaked out." Zheng, who hadn't spoken the entire time, spoke. What? What's the meaning of this?" The stone hunter's face changed. "What do you mean? All of you will die." The flat-nosed disciple of the 10 Directions sword sect laughed sinisterly. No, you said that as long as you found a safe path, you would let us go. You can't do this. You are disciples of the 10 Directions sword school. You can't go back on your word. I'm begging you. No, I don't want to die. I curse you to die a horrible death." More than 10 stone hunters had already had hope, but at this time, their faces were filled with despair and they started to shout crazily. "Curse us! You all know that we are disciples of the 10 Directions sword school. Who would dare to kill us?" The flat-nosed disciple of the 10 Directions sword sect sneered. "Hey! There's a person there, walking towards us." Suddenly, a disciple of the 10 Directions sword school shouted. The rest of the people couldn't help but look over. From the right, a young figure was walking towards them. The figure was about 15 or 16 years old. He had a slender figure and a delicate face. However, his eyes were extremely cold, so cold that it was terrifying. This young man was Lu Ming. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.